Oh. Oh God. Oh. If you're wondering why I'm laughing like I am, it's because the first message that has flashed up in front of me is Daniel Freeman's "I need a pee." We haven't even started. I'm the one who's drinking like 3 liters of 3 liters of iron brew, and you're already saying it. Hello, Blue Ship Buddha. Hello, Jack Ray. Hello, Richardson. Hello, Greg. I know it's not. It wouldn't be the same Sunday afternoons if it didn't involve Jay or Mr. Richardson having a nice large amount of scotch. Osprey, hello. Thank you very much. Seriously, I haven't started yet. Reason I'm running late is thanks to my very, very nice patrons and the money they send. These have arrived. And I haven't opened them yet, but they literally arrived yesterday, and they're the reason the small ships has been delayed, part 2, because it's going to benefit from all of these. So that's why part 2 hasn't gone up yet. Because these basically have arrived, so part 2 is being modified. And this has got some particularly cool photos in it. I do like this Malcolm Wright series. If you don't know about them, let's see. Yeah. This is the Cruisers, Mine Layers, etc. version. And, yeah. They are cool. They have got some beautiful, beautiful imaginings. Again, if you are the type of person who's doing modelling, these books, this whole series, I've got another 2 of them somewhere, I think students have got them at the moment, are absolutely brilliant. Hello, Night Heron Productions. Look at that. Look at that. If you're doing modelling, these are the sort of books you want to get. And I actually have just thought about it because I've got a friend of mine who is trying to make a huge wooden black swan from scratch. And this has just arrived, and I think this is the book I'm going to have to tell them to go get because... oh, it's good. It's very good. It's very pretty. Very, very pretty. This just arrived. This is one of the books which the very, very nice patrons... basically, as I can't go any on research trips this summer, any money that comes to me in the Patreon fund, that's what I'm using it for, is literally to buy books. Ooh, Black Swan Buildsman, I'm ahead of you. Ooh, yes, you are. You have. But, Bijon, I am happy to have caught up with you because, again, the Les Brown series, they're something special. They are really works of art, this series of books. And, oh, it's beautiful. It's going to be a lot of fun for me. A lot of fun. I need to make sure the Cruisers goes back in the right place because I need that later. Now, hello, Tony. Hello, Bijon. I didn't think I said that. Ooh. Bijon, you're now on to Tribal Captain by Edward Hara. So you're now on to... it is around here and in front of me. I'm sure it is. If it's not, it's moved. Oh, it has moved. It's right in front of me and here. This one. This is a good book. I'm sure you're enjoying this one. Endomagic it's an interesting story, and it's the Canadian experience of World War II, and it's something which can be so easily forgotten in some of the narratives which come across. Easily forgotten, unfortunately. Right, let's do that, because I think that's a bit better for me. Yeah, I'm now a bit more visible. I don't look like I'm quite so hungry. Ooh. Hi, Daniel. Right then, let's see. Primark, how do you organise all your books? Subject, title, author. I have a ready access shelves, which are basically these 4 sets of shelves. which are the ones I'm using for current work projects. Then I have shelves of stuff which I need occasionally, but less ready access to. And then I have, if I turn you around, the other shelves of books and boxes of books and more boxes upstairs because I emptied out my office at work and everything and brought it home. Also emptied out my sister's office at work and brought it home because we're both lecturers. So before this all happened, so all the books have literally descended upon my home. It's always fun. It's always fun. Right. So, let's see. Vision, I got the other books in the series on the way and wish there was a USN equivalent. On these, there might well be going to be an IJN equivalent. I have heard rumours that Les was planning a trip. I don't actually know him personally, but I've heard rumours from a friend of mine who's a Japanese specialist that he'd been talking with him and that he might be going to be having a trip to Japan. So they might be going to expand to the IJN. I'm not sure if he's thinking about doing USN because Freeman's books are just so big and so powerful, you know, that he's worried it might not have space. But, you know, thing. And, of course, two of these books are, well, this one's John Lambert from the John Lambert collection, and this is edited and compiled by Noel Freeman after I think John Lambert died. It's his counterpart to the one I've already got up there, British Naval Weapons of World War II, Escorts and Minesweeper Weapons. That's a cool one. And the other one is the Allied Coastal Forces by John Lambert. Thermal designs and US submarine chasers. It's just pretty. And it is. I have seen this before and stumbled over this because my plan, and this sort of reveals it, after I've finished the tribal books, is to try and do a book which connects all the technology and all the operations of these the smaller ships up with a strategy. I'm still working on how I'm going to approach it, whether it's just going to be on sloops or whether it's going to be in gunboats and all sort of things, but that's sort of the initial idea, and this is why I've got these sort of books in, but also why I'm doing so much work on part 1 and part 2. Right, of the little ships thing. Yes, Jeff Beeler, mine are scattered around the house and shelves tend to fill up too fast. They do. They do. You need to buy more shelves. Always need to buy more shelves. Right, so, today's about fiction books. Steam White, too late, gave up modelling, mucked up Prince of Wales camo, very bad paint. Look, what I always tell people about most of the camo paint is also, remember, most of the guides provided aren't that accurate because, let's be honest, most of the sailors were applying it, were doing what they could where they were dangling from where they could, wherever they were. So, you know, the painting ship, the interesting thing is HMS Cumberland was going through painting ship while she was down in the Falklands before she made her dash up after the Battle of the River Plate to take over as the third ship with with Harwood's force. And I think she was about halfway through painting ships. Fiction books and Iron Brew, yes. The fiction books and the Iron Brew is all piled up here. So, for some fiction books, and these are some things which actually I thought were, what fiction books will I do? Well, I do all naval ones. Well, I could do all naval ones quite easily. But I thought if I'm going to do naval ones, I'm also going to do a bit of variety. So I'm doing a mixture of naval ones and non-naval, and I'm going to alternate between the set. Starting off with, of course, Douglas Reamond's Battlecruiser, which I've shown to you all many, many times. I love this story because it is such interesting history, but also brings the cruise alive. If you haven't read it, it is something... It's a beautiful and less well-known book, okay? And speaking as a naval historian, I could read this book, and I wasn't spending the entire time thinking, oh, they've got it wrong, they've got it wrong, they've got it wrong. Yeah, it's a good one. There's some interesting questions going on. I'm just going to quickly break into it and look at them. A quick question for you, Doctor. Do you think RN could have used the Mullins guns more? It could have been nice, but it's where you fit it. It's looking at the other guns. What capability does it give you that other guns don't sort of cover? That's the trouble for it. There was a thread somewhere on painting invasion stripes on aircraft before D-Day with brooms. Yes. You've got to remember, the painting, sometimes I listen to the people and they're going, yes, I've got out this, this, and this, and I'm doing this painting very, very exact. And there are things that you can be exact. But if you're talking, if it's on a sufficiently small enough scale, okay, it's going to be a very much approximate. And even once you got to the really huge scale, okay, then I can understand. When you're painting individual people, you don't paint camo paint on sailors in the middle of, the sea. But they might well actually, have all sorts of colorings thanks to the joy of smoke and other chemicals going around on a ship, especially if they're under fire. I've seen colorized photos based on accounts where the people have looked bright orange because of diesel fuel, which had some coloring in it. That's not really something you want to get doused with in the middle of a firefight, but So this is a good book. Right then. Non-naval. Tom Clancy's Red Storm Rising. If you haven't read it, it's about pretty much my favourite of the ones he has written. And he wrote a huge number. But also, it's quite useful in terms of setting out a introduction to what you're talking about in terms of the scale of a global war is. And he gives you a nice sort of progression into it. But saying that, there are some problems. But, hey, Carl. Hey, Carl and Carl. Hey, Daniel. Hey, Jay. Don't worry. Red Storm Rising. Let's put it this way. There is a naval component to it, definitely. But I have to say, I tend to try and avoid certain sections of the naval stuff because he gets it quite so strange. But definitely the Icelandic part and the broader strategy part is very, very good. And the invasion of Iceland is something which is worthwhile looking at and considering. And I have actually wargamed Red Storm Rising as an operational concept using them at King's during my time there, and it was interesting because I got it. We weren't running really properly fully length games. They were sort of, everything was sped up, but yeah, when you're given those sort of concepts of this is the broad tenets of the operation you've got to do, but you've got to think about how you're going to do it. It's amazing what some of the things you can come up with if you're prepared to use the ideas and the factors that he's brought in. So it is quite interesting. Hi, Shomac. It does have convoys. It does have everything in it. It's an interesting book. Angus O'Sonnell, what was the rationale for invading Iceland? Basically breaking the NATO's ability to block the North Atlantic. If you take out Iceland and manage to occupy Iceland, then you can stop all the fighters, all the AWACS, all the long-range maritime patrol aircraft, etc., operating from Iceland, and a huge gap appears in the defences. And unlike Norway and most of the other parts of NATO, Iceland is poorly defended the whole way through the Cold War, really. It is definitely the weak spot. So, this is actually Tom Clancy's far more naval-based. SSN. And I like it. And not just because it's basically him trying to do Red Storm Rising, but in the Spratlys in the South China Sea. And it's, yeah, look, I have to say, I have a feeling that it's a little bit simplified, but it's definitely an interesting read. And it's, of course, an American submarine versus Chinese, broadly speaking, submarines. And it's, you know, it's something to read. There are some very good book suggestions coming up. I'm going to be getting to them. Right. Danny Freeman, there was an interview on SimSec recently with his co-author, who's USN ASW officer, so it might be less realistic than otherwise deliberately. I would never say, but there are some things in it you're looking at going, Okay. So, you want an explanation, and a very good one, of the joys of realpolitik in an emerging technological era and how people can deal with it and what people can react, then I recommend this. Terry Pratchett's theme. Okay? So, Raising's theme. I use passages from Terry Pratchett where I've changed the names. I delete names. Especially some of the diplomacy stuff when I'm teaching international relations sometimes. And people turn around and go, ooh, when did this happen? What was this? You know, what was this? And I point out to Terry Pratchett, but they go, but that seems so. Yes. It's slightly humorous. Well, when I say slightly humorous, it's very humorous. It's very funny, but, you know, in a nicest way, if you want an introduction to the realities, in a way, the realities of international relations and diplomacy, and you want some ideas about it, this book is actually very, very good. And the amount of stuff I sometimes hear about, being silly stuff being talked about Terry Pratchett, I sit there and go, no, this is good. Blue Shirt Buddha, has episode 3 of the Bilge Pumps been posted? No, I think it goes out next week, possibly the week after. I'm not sure. They're having their special at the moment, but we have recorded episode 4 and are prepping to record episode 5. So, you know, we love doing the Bilge Pumps. The Bilge Pumps crew basically have a lot of fun, and our messages go back and forth non-stop. Ed Beach. Shipgear Africanus. Also, sorry, you must read review Ed Beach. Run Sun, Run Deep. Yes, I have that book somewhere. Oh. I will have to say there was a temptation for me today to bring some history books here today, which are the history books which I consider more a story read than a history read. But there are, that is getting me into a bit area where I'm being a bit cruel. It's things like, you know, there are some books which are honestly far more of a story of history than they are history. And that's good thing. That's a good thing. Having a history which is easy reading is nice sometimes. Right. So, when you're talking about non-state actors, the reality of the world and all these things, actually Bernard Cornwell's Stormchild is also a rather good one. It's going to be at least military of the whole thing, but basically, Guy loses son and daughter in explosion, goes off yachting round the world to try and track down his daughter, who he thinks might have caused the explosion, who has taken up with a radical group of environmental activists who believe in sailing around the world and blowing things up from yachts. And all about how he tracks her down and is looking for his daughter and all these things, and how he's dealing with the world that is very much, when you're at sea, you are beyond the unless you are absolutely in front of some organization, you are beyond the reach of the law. The sea as a lawless state, and the fact that it is still a lawless state today. So that's a very interesting read if you want it. Bernard Cornwell series. Bernard Cornwell's a good writer anyway, but you know, Stormchild is very, very good. Primark 359. So they will continue. They will continue past the original plan for it. Yes. Basically, we decided from the initial response, Drac and even Jamie have been experiencing the big problem we have. Kevin Matag, yes, if you can post the links for the Apple Podcast or Google Play, that'd be very kind of you from the Bilge Pumps. But the big problem we have, the big question we have, is we do need new artwork. So, as we said, we've put this all out to all of you, because you're all far better artists than we are, to go, what do you think? You know, what do you think would be a good, what do you think would be a good representation of us? Because we currently got the initial one, which Jamie has very kindly put up together, which has a quote from his wife, which is very, very funny, but I'm not sure how much longer we can go on using it. So we need a new quote, we need a new sort of thing. And if you want to do them, literally just, Kevin, could you where would you like it posted? Could you please post them in the post them in the current chat, you know, have people chatting if they want to see them, if they want the links, or in the comments below. I think probably comments below if people are looking for bilge pumps. You know, it's one of those things. The artwork is really cool, we've got already, but we would like better artwork, and we've done it for you lot. So if anyone would like to come forward with suggestions of artwork, please tweet it at us. You know, my Twitter at AC_Naval History, or at Drakenfennel, or Jamie's at Armoured Carriers. All right then, next book. This is definitely not naval, but it's Last Legion by, I always forget the author actually, Valerio Massimo Manfredi, and it's good. It's a really good read. If you're interested at all in Roman history, this is a good read. Good place to start. And finally, you see, many people are expecting me to do the Hornby or the Hornby or the Hornblower or all those regular series. Actually, as much as I like them all, my preferred series is the Drinkwater series by Richard Woodman, and I consider it a slightly more grittier, slightly more, how do I put this? Slightly more realistic, actually, than Hornblower. In some ways, Hornblower, as much as I enjoy Hornblower, and I really do enjoy it, I feel Hornblower, to an extent, sanitizes the history a bit in a way. This is very, very real. And it's very, very good. Richard Woodman, I'll make sure this is more able to see. And it's in the final Drinkwater series. This is the omnibus book. This is the one I usually take on holiday with me when I'm traveling around, because then I don't have to take all the separate little books with me. It doesn't contain all the books by any way, but it contains about 3 of them, and it's the beginning 3, so it's a good set to take with me, and it's one book rather than multiple books. It's a less likelihood of me losing anything. Let's see. Artwork. Drac keeps his symbol for Dr. Clark. It's a bottle of Brew. I haven't listened to the podcast, but I will. Please do, and please, have a think about what we could have as our symbols, because it'd be quite cool. It's quite cool to see what you all think of it. Daniel Freeman, Nathaniel Drinkwater. First of all, novel is 99p on Kindle. Yep. I don't have the Kindle ones for the Drinkwater series, but I probably should, because then that would mean I would be less likely to lose them. But that's because I had these books for so long, they've become part of my life, but they are very, very good. King's Rook, after the stream, could you get a post on Discord with all the books? Also, I have to admit, there are a few books I quite like, which are on the sort of science fiction, but I'm going to do science fiction books another time. I think we'll do science fictions at another point of time. Sean Mac, an armoured bottle of iron, bro. Paul Johnson, evening. Sorry, I'm late. I had to pick up my Chinese takeaway. Now I'm jealous and hungry. That's cruelty. We're not having Chinese takeaways or anything in this house at the moment because, well, basically, we're on, because my mum and sister are on shielding. My mum by letter from the government, my sister because her asthma is not far off my mum's. We are on pretty much permanent lockdown. It's fun times. Jeff Beeler, Drax sailor drinking iron brew on the deck of HMS Victorious. Ooh, tempting. Carl Hammond, have you read Italian Job? Yes, I have read the Italian Job. I'd also add, in the nicest way, there are some books which are, well, okay. This is not a fiction book. It's one I inherited from my grandfather, who inherited it from his father, who served in it, and is mentioned in it. So when you look through and you find a guy called Edgar Jacobs in it, in this one, it's worth it. It's all about Naval 8, and that's what it's actually called, and it was published originally in 1931. A history of Number 8 Squadron, RNAS, afterwards Number 208 Squadron, Royal Air Force, from its formation in 1916 until the armistice in 1918. And it's really, really interesting in terms of it explains so much about the history of what the Fleet Air Arm and all these things were doing. And I actually find it a bit of a good read. But as you can see, it's very, very old and a little tattered. And I need to protect it very, very much. But it does have quite cool pictures in it. So you get to see how young they were, literally. Honestly, it's going to sound strange. The phrase I sometimes think looking at them is, I'm wondering if any of them have actually shaved before they go into combat. I don't think some of them had trouble with the no beard rule. Oh, no. E-bike. Right. So, that's some fiction books. I hope you've enjoyed those. Carl Harmon, also, how good is Damien Lewis as a historian, as I have 3 of his books in the buying involved? He's pretty good. Pretty good. You know, I have a lot of time for a lot of different historians for different reasons. I hate it when people say they are bad historians and there are good historians. Yes, there are some objectively bad historians, but they're very few and very rare between, and they're usually the sort of people who will go into it with a fixed idea and will ignore any evidence which contradicts that idea. That's a bad historian. Other than that, there are different types of historians, and just because someone is a different type of historian to you doesn't mean they're a bad historian. Just because someone writes a different style to you doesn't mean they're a bad historian. There are historians I know who write these Rutledge books, which I've got behind me. They're the very, very academic history books. They're incredibly academic books. And I love reading them. But will I ever write one? I'm not sure. I can write that way. I do write journal articles. That none of them, they're going through the process of publishing. But doing it for a whole book, honestly, I would probably find that quite boring. My style is not that pure academic-y when it comes to writing something as long as a book. I want to write something which is going to draw in the average reader as well as be useful to the historian and the history student. And so, therefore, my style might be liked by me, but there might be people who would say I was a bad historian. But, you know, there are very few bad historians. There are just different historians. Any chance I can link his petition for the honour to be given to, for him to be given the award he was denied? Ooh. I'm not sure what's going on that one, but you're going to have to explain it. I don't know. I haven't seen who missed an award. Okay. Okay, right then. Tis Francis. The oldest book I own is a 1914 British Service Bible. I have you beat by 2 years, but only just by 2 years. And I have a book about torpedo design from 1912, which is also from my great-grandfather. He was an engineer. He's responsible for most of building most of Croydon. Man. Ooh, Tiberius Claudius Combus. Earlier today, I copped for a load of books from a late neighbour, including Showing the Flag by Augustus Agar. Oh, that'll be good. German. Whale has wings. Atrus Eagle in Falklands. England in space. Man, yeah. Okay. Vision. Elmer glues works well for books or repairs if you're careful, but new or old cheap paperbacks, I reinforce them with tape behind covers. Harris book from 1960s got reinforced. I'm not surprised. I should really do far more to look after my books. Trouble is, I buy books and I expect them to. I read them. I have, again, I know people who buy books and they are literally never touched. They are pretty much preserved in pristine condition, and that works for them, but it couldn't work for me because it's like those new books and the ones down there. Now my book is finished and is going through the last bits before it's completely off my hands. Really. Mainly I've got to sort out the pictures and those sort of things. I will be diving through all my new books, and I will be probably forgetting to sleep and all sorts of things because I'll be reading them all, because that's what I love to do. I love to read the books and I see what inspires me to write, and I go away and I write stuff and I do stuff and I basically pick it all up, and that's part of my process. I can't understand you putting the books on one side and not doing anything. I have to say though, there is a book in my room which has never been opened, which is The Times Complete History of the World. But someone bought that for me, and it is colossal, and I just haven't got round to opening it. Is it William Bolton? Is it me, or has the audio gone quiet? Well, perhaps I'm speaking quieter, but hopefully not. We'll see. We'll see. Right. The audio is popping for you. King's Rook. I'm not sure why the audio is popping. It shouldn't be. Ah, well. Let's see. Ah. Interesting enough. Let's see. Something has just come through. Ah. Just had an email from Michael Clapp, who's just found his his new because I'd sent him a link anyway, his new Wikipedia page, and he's going, wow, it's got this. He has got some corrections for it, but they're sort of minor things. I've got this, and they've didn't give him the Korean campaign medal and the UN medal that went with it. So, yeah. Okay, I'll sort that out. But just thought I'd share that with you all live, because it's literally just come through while I've been on air. Michael Clapp emailing me. Oh. Right. So, back to anything written by Roland White is easy reading history. Is that still working? Yes, I think so. I think it's still working. You've got Tacitus in Latin. Oh, good lord, Stephen White. Just returned. I'm not sure. Donald Robertson, please oil the creaking chair. Believe it or not, I have actually covered it in WD-40 already today, and it is still a little bit creaky. It's not as old as thing. If you last thing you heard was Michael Clapp's email, as I said, I received from him. He's just found his Wikipedia page, and he's looking through it and going, it's got this. Yeah, it's got me down in Korea, but it's forgotten I got the Korean service medal and these sort of things. So it's going, how do I contact the author? I will share some pictures with them and chat with them. So I know the author is on my Discord, so if they can send me a message, with an email address, I will send that to Michael Clapp, and Michael can email them, and they can chat away if they'd like to. Silicon grease. I use WD-40. We're on lockdown. That's what I have. It's the one I had is WD-40, so that's what I've used. Pretty much, I looked through my list of the stuff I had sitting in my garage, and I either had my railway engine oil, my car oil, or WD-40, and I decided for the chair, it was getting the WD-40. Right. So, easy reading history books. Basically anything by Roland White is pretty good. That's a sort of easy reading history. There are some good ones, but Roland White is a good easy reading history. That's one you can sort of read as a sort of if you have a normal sort of book you normally like to sort of have a lighter read before you go to bed, that's a good one. Also, Karen's Gallipoli is fairly good for that. And anything by Anthony Beaver. Jermac, engineering a logarithm number 1. If it doesn't move, should use WD-40. If it moves but shouldn't, use speed tape. Basically, the Royal Navy's approach to everything is if it moves but doesn't, WD-40. If it moves but shouldn't, you apply gaffer tape or any other tape. Anything really. Kevin Tanner, Bilge Pump podcast is now posted on yours and Drakenfernell's Discord channels. Thank you. Oh, that's it does. Right. Danny Freeman, easy reading history, James Holland. Yes, James is quite good. I've only got one of his books though. I should probably start, mentioning. I'm trying to think. Easy reading history is a sort of growing field, thankfully. There are some good young authors coming through. Greg Stalski, someone should translate Karol Olga's memoirs into English. Polish pre-war merchant marine officer who served in the Norway campaign, amongst others. Really, for that, you need to contact a historian like my girlfriend. Someone who can think and write in multiple languages so that they can actually get it correct. Because often when you're translating something like history, it's not just picking the correct words in terms of the translation of the text, in terms of the words accurately. It's translating the words accurately for the context of the text as well, and what phrase you're picking, because it might not translate directly across. Turning 343 at Dr. Clark. I know the answer, but Iron Brew or Dr. Pepper? That you even asked that question is worrying. Turning 343. Even asking that question is worrying. Iron Brew. Daniel Freeman. I was shocked to realise Dan Jones, more a TV historian, is the same age as me. Yes, he is. He's not as old as some people think. He's also not as young as some people think. Yeah, I have to say I was having fun with some books I was grabbing yesterday from my shelves, because I was taking books down to do some searching, and I ended up grabbing basically all my copies of this, the Military Handbook series, which I always remember because I took them into work with me once. Well, into university with me once at King's, and it caused consternation amongst some of my colleagues. And it didn't really cause consternations. Consternation in terms of, you know, the fact I was using them amongst the war studies or the historians. It caused consternation amongst some of the geography students we were sharing with, because they were going, well, why are they relevant? What do they do? And I was going, well, if I need to compare ships in an easy way, quickly, get a quick idea of what I'm going, these put all the things in the same format. That's proper. That's how you do it. Alex Miller finally made one live with a bottle of brew. That is a very good thing to do. Right. Angus, sorry, what spirits would you mix with Iron Brew if you were in fact inclined to do such a thing? I know some of my cousins from north of the border, Scotland, who do mix their Iron Brew with absinthe, but I wouldn't recommend that. It's very interesting. Actually, I had to say, one of the ad hoc things I hear about Iron Brew, and I'm not sure if this is true or not. I've never done any testing, and I've said before, my PhD's in war studies, not you know, chemistry or biology, but all the things which can be used for various, you know, date rapes and that sort of things, apparently cause Iron Brew to go a funny colour. So they cause it to change colour if they go in. Anything goes in, because it's got a combination of caffeine, quinine, and other things in it. It causes a combination reaction. So actually, if you want to protect your family members from having a bad night out, get them hooked on the Iron Brew. Not sure if it works or not, but that's what the anecdotal evidence I've heard from my lady cousins in Scotland. Although I personally find it annoying that they have to worry about that. But rum is also apparently good and popular. Scotch, of course. That's called the double. That's called the double Scottish. Apparently, it's a mixture of Scotch whiskey and Iron Brew. Is called the double Scottish. That as a cocktail sounds like a scary, scary one, but yeah. I know. I sort of, because I don't drink, when I've been out with people, with friends, etc., who do, and sort of watching around, I have once or twice had to intervene when I've noticed something's gone weird with friends, when they've suddenly stopped behaving as they normally do. Let's put it this way: I've spotted they've had about 2 drinks, and they are acting like they've had about 12 drinks, at which point I go, okay, right, you're now next to me. I don't know who you are, young man, but no. Bye-bye. Tends to work quite well. Samron, how to command a nuclear submarine? That's a fun one. Yeah. But no. Jeff Beale, Andrew Lamb is one of my favourite popular historians. He is very, very good, and you know, he's just cool. Timothy Snyder's also fairly good as well. I quite like him for a popular history read. And David Ragg. David Ragg is cool. I love his books. I have lots of them. That's one of my favourite books of his, Swordfish. If you want a quick read, if you're going on trains and things like that, Story of the Taranto Raid by David Ragg is just, it's some wonderful history, and it just guides you along. Right, so let's get on to some naval history questions. That sounds good. How's the historical program? Carl Gannon, how's the historical program on Thursday? We don't have the channel in Belgium. Well, you can get Discovery off Amazon as well, if you fancy that. And it's a lot of fun. It's a bit weird watching me, because I'm wearing a red shirt and this tie in every single one, because it's my lucky tie. So I wore it for the first one, not realizing, never having done television work before, that I was then going to have to wear it and the shirt in every single combination. I did it every other day I turn up, so it would be continuity. And oh, that was funny, because it turns out this tie and the shirt I was wearing like to crackle as materials. So the poor sound camera person who was also doing the sound every single time was going, please, please. Sorry, continuity. It's the ruling of the producers. I have to wear it, and every single time I was feeling sorry for them. So next time for future, I know I have to wear a tie like this, which is slightly less crinkly material. Jeff Beeler, how does one address a retired Commodore? Usually I go Commodore. And don't worry, I'll pass his email on to you. So basically, his email, your email onto him, and he'll email you. Don't worry, Jeff. It'll be fun. It will be. Right then. Kevin Taylor, Dr. Ferguson Clark, what books do you recommend to get a history of ships' power plants, i.e. single and double expansion engines? Ooh, engines. Ah. Ooh, I have a big book of engines somewhere. I do have a big, massive, I'm talking a book that thick on ships' engines. I'm betting I've loaned it to a mechanical engineering student of mine. I'm betting I have, because I'm just remembering it. But... this book, Technical Change and British Naval Policy, 1816 to 1939, does have some good stuff about the development of engines and the Whitehead torpedo and Royal Navy submarine policy. The relations between Admiralty and private industry in the development of warships by Hugh Lyon is chapter 3, and that's got a lot of good stuff about engines. So it's a good one. Jeff Beeler, Michael Clapp is a swashbuckling. Yes, he is. And actually, the thing is, his actual thing was, oh, I've got some more stories I could add to that. That's only that's less than half of them. So God help us, that man just got end up like. Turning 343, Discovery or History Channel with actual history. You can see it's a Discovery Channel, and it's called Mysteries of the Deep, and it's quite good. Nighthawk production, an ideal paint scheme for snorkeling submarines in clear Pacific Caribbean waters. Now post-World War II in camouflage subs. HMS Boston is a relatively recent example that comes to mind for camo on a sub. Actually, they have looked in this recently, and it's working out what to paint the submarine. Painting it black is very good if you're doing deep water work, because at that point it doesn't really matter. But if you are in the shallow waters of the Mediterranean, they were actually looking at this. And I think there was one study where they tried painting them all light blue and all sorts of things, and light green. I think they found light green was the best colour, but the paint wore off too quickly. Krosowski, Dr. Alex Clark, constantly saw on Twitter today about a Polish Hunt DD ORP Sluzak coming up the beach to rescue Canadians after Deep Rope. Thought immediately of your DD talks. Yes. Oh, they did that. Actually, here's the most interesting thing, and this is completely also sidetracked part of the part 2 of the Little Ships one, is the Flower class ended up in service of the Kriegssmarine, because 4 were being built in France and the Germans took them over. So the Flower class corvette served on both sides of World War II. That is how many were built. Just, you know, amazing. Jeff Wheeler, what were the effects on the Falklands War and the Royal Navy? Have you seen the Type 23 frigates? Well, let's put it this way. Type 23 frigates, which are the design, and Type 22 broad beam ones, gained guns, deck guns, and gained all sorts of things added onto them post Falklands War experience. Naval gunfire support suddenly became incredibly important, as did fixing the radar. Plus, it sort of cemented amphibious warfare as a capability skill, but we've got to keep it going, that one. Nighthawk production, a boom mic should resolve that in my experience. Yes, it does to an extent, but they preferred to have the more natural thing of having the mic being a clip-on mic, and that was fun. So all the clip-on mics are clipped on behind my tie. And my girlfriend keeps watching it, and she keeps sending messages going, oh, if I'd been there, your tie would have been so corrected. And I haven't the heart to tell her that most of the times my tie has been run all over the place to try and make sure that it stops making the mic amp crackling noise. So that's why the tie keeps moving. But no, it was really, really fun. They're really nice people to do. The Icon Films Bristol, they were really nice people to work with. Bandham, given the success of ships destroyers around the 2,500 tons range, would it be reasonable to assume that class of sloops like frigates around the same size would be useful in the future? Probably, yeah. I would actually think in the nicest way that would be what I'd be looking at if I was building a modern sloop corvette. Would be 2.5 to 3,000 tons would probably be the range I'd be looking at. Possibly even for an unmanned vessel would be what I'd be looking at. Think about what you could track into 2,500 to 3,000 tons of unmanned ship without need to support the crew. So no accommodation spaces, no waste facilities, no galley, no anything. Just maintenance access. Becomes interesting. Saw a video of the wreck of Kaga. Surprised me. I'm usually aware of expeditions like that. Now they found a bit of the flight deck of Ikkaku years ago, but now got the whole ship for the Kaga. They are doing some very good work with Discovery. Turning free for free. Jeff Beeler. The Dutch designed the Karl Dorman multi-purpose frigates on the First World on Falklands War experiences. Yeah, lots of navies did. Basically, the Falklands War happened. And you suddenly had this surge of people going, oh, that didn't work like that. Oh, ow. The number of people who after the Falklands War were going, ow, my precious dreams. And the number of people going, yes, they did work. Juicy Susan, which was the most effective anti-ship weapon? The Mark 14 torpedo or decent collection of your mum jokes? Look, the Mark 14 torpedo, as the Drac has gone into on many occasions, was very, very interesting. It is only exceeded by a few systems in World War II for its inefficiency as a killing system. One of those being the mine system that the Royal Navy were deploying on one stretch of the coast to protect D-Day. Which produced minefields which the Germans could successfully run into, but the British didn't dare go in because they knew there were mines there. That caused Admiral Ramsay to do something, probably do far more damage than King did even. So these are the joys of history. Weapons don't work sometimes. They're just annoying. So Admiral, since it's tis fanciful. Good. Tis Admiral. Since it's fiction themed books and such, what do you reckon of Tom Clancy's more naval ones? Red October, Red Storm Rising, Bear and Dragon Act, if you've read them, obviously. Well, Red Storm Rising I did mention at the beginning. Red October I have got staring at me somewhere. I like them, but I do find it's like Red Storm Rising. There are certain sections of the naval bit which I just skip over. Honestly, I just skip through because I'm sitting there going, it wouldn't work like that. And, oh, really? And the interesting thing is some of the convoy stuff he gets up to. Let's put it this way. Yeah, Clancy suffers a similar issue than many American authors do, in that they presume the tech battle in terms of the Western tech is that always the American equipment is going to be better. And actually, usually, I would say it depends on what factors you're talking about, whether a piece of equipment is better. Some equipment is better than others. Some equipment is better in certain circumstances than others. And some of it's adaptable, depends on your tactics. So you always have to be quite careful with making a sweeping statement of, this is the best missile system, or this is the best this, or this is the best that. It's not, doesn't work quite like that. The fluffy research assistant is always a necessary assistant. Right. Paul Johnson, can you recommend a book on the Merchant Navy in World War II? I could. I have a few somewhere. Goodness me, I cannot see a lump for the life of me. There's a good one I've got, which is actually a fiction book. which is absolutely not poking out on me at all. So I'll have to hunt it down. Because I cannot remember its title for the life of me at the moment. Bishon. I watched Battle of the River Plate on 1956 last night. Couldn't help but thinking about how Hull would have fared against USS Salem or the Graf Spee against the Des Moines class cruiser. He'd have probably done okay. In Asmara, he's adapting his tactics to his opponent. And that's what Harwood does. The Graf Spee against the Des Moines class cruiser. Here's the more interesting thing. How would the Graf Spee have fared against a town class cruiser? I.e. something with all that much more firepower in terms of 6-inch guns. Armour not far off that of a full-on county. Speed and the search radius. Yes, in nicest way, theoretically, he wins, but I'm not sure whether Graf Spee actually wins that fight. Remember, especially not by the time the River Plate happens. Okay. Lieutenant Pebble, look at HMS Stormy in the Pacific Cami. Sub looks great with camouflage. Yes, they do. They do look good with camouflage. And they do need it for sometimes. Kevin Taylor, Dr. Ross Clark, how is Frederick Chopin Lane as a historian? I can't remember if I read the book. I think I have got a book by them, but I'm not sure. So I won't comment. And if I can't remember having read their book, I won't comment. If I met them personally, I'll talk about them, and if I've read their books, I'll talk about them. But I'm not one of those people who's going to talk about people I haven't done those two things of. German. Now I need to check if German Flowers had 40mm Bofors on them. They did get 40mm. They get all sorts of weird things. I haven't included them in my weapons list because they get weird stuff. They capture 4. They only build 3, only 3 in the service. Donald Robertson. Any thoughts of UK acquiring French invention to locate submerged subs from wave panel analysis? What makes you think that the British and the Americans don't have their own methods of this? It's the systems based around the using weather satellites, and trust me, everyone who's got access to weather satellites is looking into it. Sure, Mac, because it turns out missiles can't do everything and give you a message at the same time. Yeah, guns do show to be very, very useful in the Falklands War, because that's where, if you consider some of the modern air defense systems we've got coming through, the 40mm Bofors, the 57mm, 76mm, these sort of things, most of them, in their terms of the modern forms. There is a reason most of their modern forms starts development in about the mid to late 1980s. Takes a while to analyse the Falklands War experience, then they start working on it. Boom, boom, boom. And then it takes about 20, 30 years to start delivering. Tony Penfold, why did Type 22 batch freeze, I'm presuming, get retired so early? Budget cut. Bingo. Literally, that was it. Vision. I've added to Wikipedia all photos of mine to articles on upstate New York stations and Amtrak services. Oh, cool. I'll have to go and look at those. We all know I like good, nice railway stuff. Kingsrook, Dust Clark. Do you know any good books that cover the Train Busters Club? Ooh. No, I don't think it does specifically, but I think British Steam Railways is a good. I'm trying to remember the author. And I've got a few other railway books sitting around here. That's sort of quite cool. But no, no. Ooh, Wartime Railwayman I've got over there, and Chris Tarrant Railways also. No. Oh, here's a book which is quite interesting. Yeah. Oh, good lord. There you go. Structural Design of Warships by no one can read that front cover. No one in their lifetime. William Hobgard, and it's in the Forgotten Books series. Structure and design of warships. This is very cool. Okay. Jeff Beeler, how would this battle go hypothetically? Admiral Grass Bay, played by heavy cruiser USS Salem, versus HMS Ajax, flagship, played by HMS Sheffield, HMS Exeter, played by HMS Jamaica, and HMS Achilles. Honestly, I wouldn't give Salem that much of a chance in that scenario. There is an advantage. Numbers is an advantage. You can look at it and go, yes, individually I can take on what I need in the ship and I can win. But can you win quickly enough against any of those ones individually that you can then win quickly enough against the others? Or if you concentrate all your fire on one ship, does that mean the other two get to fire at you unmolested? Lessons of Tsushima, of Jutland, show that you can't afford to leave ships unmolested. So that means you have to divide your fire. If you have to divide your fire, you complicate your targeting, your directing process dramatically, which reduces the effectiveness of your fire, which means it could mean more likely to misses. And they're just concentrate. They have one target. All three of them have the same target. Yes, you can say their splashes can cause them to miss that sort of way, and they could miscorrect and all these things. Yes, that's all case. But if you've got enough of an advantage in numbers, i.e. 3-1, you're never really going to win that scenario, no matter how good, unless there's when you're all cruisers. Unless there is a dramatically sort of different scenario, i.e. those 3 British ships were corvettes or even possibly destroyers. But there again, if they were, it depends on type of destroyer, because if they're tribals, they probably ram you to try and take you out. Honestly, let's be honest, HMS Eskimo loses its bow so often, it really wouldn't bother about ramming you. And I don't think the others would either. So, you know, it's not a nice scenario when you've got multiple numbers on you. Tony Penfold, loyal wingman USS ship concept, 3,000 tons, great idea. Could work. And also think about it, 3,000 tons, you're going to be building a ship which is going to be fairly good at going to sea. That's the thing. Kevin Tarrant, Dr. Clark, could the book by Thomas Crump, A Brief History of the Age of Steam, from the first engines to the boats and railways, be good? It is good. It is good. I think I've got that myself somewhere. Or I've got something very similar to that. Carl von Gasberg, 3,000-ton warship without security and boarded by some third world pirates. Honestly, if you're talking about building a ship like that, you would have to build in a lot of security to make sure it couldn't be boarded by people. It would probably not have something in a nicest way. It wouldn't be the easiest thing to get aboard. You would probably need a helicopter or something to get aboard, and it would probably have to have a rule that if anything tried to get close to it, it could get shot out the sky. You know, there are certain scenarios you can factor in defenses and all sorts of things. Donovan, perhaps upgrade to adopt tempting. Sure, Mac. Humans have this really annoying habit to want to have quality of life and makes design very difficult. It does. Jeff Biller, how did the Royal Navy Falklands affect the Royal Navy organisation, other than realising they should have had made clap an admiral? Oh, it didn't affect it enough really for the first 10 years, but it's had a big impact since. Most of the task force organisation, most of the structuring of the Expeditionary Royal Navy is based around Falklands War experience. Richie's 2017 Brigadier Roderick MacDonald, The Falklands War, a 35-year perspective on YouTube is a very good lecture for those interested. It is a very good one. Fluffy research assistant is very important. Okay. A lesson of the Type 14 is after spending a great deal of money on a weapon, it's worth spending a bit extra to make sure it actually works. That is always the case. Tis Primark 359. In Red October, the Russian sub-captain says, Halsey acted stupidly. What would he be referring to? There are so many options. Halsey has a tough war. He does well, but he has a tough war. I have spotted it. Right. So, earlier, someone asked me, Merchant Navy in World War II fiction book. Brian Colston's The Bone Collectors. It's a really, really good read and a really good book. But it is something which I will warn you, you will get wrapped up in the story of. I won't spoil the ending, but it will have a big impact on you and you won't go away thinking the same things about the Merchant Navy as you thought before and their war. Not in a sort of negative way of them, but in a sort of way where you'll go, oh, frick. Because after reading this, I went and did a lot of research and I came back thinking, so we sit there and we rate the Eastern Front, the war against Japan, all these things as hard wars. And they are hard wars. And they're sort of hard fighting in some way. We forget about what these guys did. And some of the stuff they went through, there's no way they didn't come home very, very changed. It was certainly not a fun war for them. Right. Jeff Beeler, aside with earphones in, I can hear everything in your room. Squeaky chair, glasses clink, cars driving by. Sorry about the cars driving by. That I can fix. Sorry about the squeaky chair. As I said, it has had WD-40 on it. But, you know. It's a nice sort of, it's an open speaker unit. Basically, once I get everything set up and I've got the game machine set up, I will use this microphone for lives, like I use it for recording the videos, and it will hopefully get rid of quite a lot of these issues for you all. But this lovely microphone doesn't plug into my phone, and for doing lives like this, my phone is by far the best system. And I know that seems strange, but the phone works better than the laptop for it. Paul Johnson, thank you. My granddad was a merchant sailor in the war, and he always said he had a quiet war and wouldn't elaborate. That's what they all responded, but their version of a quiet war, as that reveals, is very different from what you and I might call a quiet war. Tiberius Claudius Commodore RN wasn't a rank in my time. It wasn't a rank in the time of Michael Clapp either. But, as I understand it, he has been officially promoted. So he has been, it's basically recognition for his war services meant that since Commodore has become a full rank, I think not that long ago, I think in less than 5 years from what I've heard, he might have been fully actually properly promoted. But every time I've asked him about it, he just said things like, my name's Michael. Alex, you've known me too long. And carries on like that. So I haven't got a proper answer out of him, so it's what I've heard. Angus, it's a pleasure to improve. I put a lot of effort into making sure it gets better because you're all so nice to me. I want to make sure I deliver a good thing for you. Golden Eagle, Douglas and Clark, Des Moines versus Grass Bay. Graph's Bay is incredibly inefficient design, so I would go with the Des Moines, but you know. Jerison, I read on a forum where Russian sailors were complaining where everything on board their ships failed, but they had so much equipment, it doesn't matter. That is pretty much the Russian methodology. Same Penfold, for modern submarine fiction, I recommend Stalking the Red Bear. Yeah, that is good. Jeff Richardson, let's see what. Halsey turned north to get Oswald bait carriers, or maybe his ride for a storm that sank 3 DDs. Halsey could also be a fair. There are so many things. Halsey is a character, okay? But honestly, that's what you want sometimes in these wars. You need a character. You need someone who's got a willpower. You know. DM versus World, there'd be a town class cruiser. That wouldn't work. I'm sorry. Town class cruiser would get involved. Or a tribal class destroyer. And either way, that's just not fun for the Des Moines. Nothing's fun for anyone to fight a tribal class destroyer. Vision. Poor HMS Cumberland had no turrets in the 1956 film. They cheered anyways for the support. For film Harm's Way, they mocked up turrets for World War II destroyers, missing them by the time of the 1960s. Yeah, they did. Sure, everything gets both of us. Yep. Scipio Afghanis. Sorry, one of the greatest sea fictions is Treasure Island. Oh, we all had to go Treasure Island, but, you know. I don't think I can add anything to a review of Treasure Island. Everyone's read it, pretty much. If they haven't, they should. I've got some interesting books up there. I have to admit, I collect a lot of books. A lot of random books. Also, for some reason, have a lot of the James Herriot Vet series. I'm not sure why. Weeb Extraordinaire, completely unrelated. But you mentioned that Eskimo lost her bow thrice. Her Wikipedia article is tragically sparse and only mentions one. When did bows number 2 and 3? Okay, so she went through 3 bows in World War II. So she was on her 3rd when she finished the war. So she actually loses it twice. Technically, although she also has a rather big bomb hit, which basically causes it to be reconstructed. So she loses one at Narvik. She loses another in an Eskimo kiss with a J-class destroyer. I think it was Jervis. I'm not sure though. And she also gets hit by a massive bomb, but doesn't quite take off the bow, but does cause it to have to be reconstructed, I think. I've actually got the whole story in my book. So you'll find the whole list, because what I've done in my book, I've done something naughty. I'm not sure if the publishers are going to like it, but I hope they can accept it. In that all the 4 tribals which go through World War II and actually get the whole way through, they've got their own sort of pop-out sections where I've given them a whole sort of, in some of the chapters, they've got a whole write-up of that particular destroyer is given a sort of write-up. So Asante has a nice write-up of the history and some of the stuff she got up to, and then it goes through each one. Eskimo, Tartar, and Nubian all have their own write-ups in the sections, which does make it a little bit repetitive because in places because of how the events go and discussing the events, but I try and keep it as different as I can do, and I try and give them each their own sort of stories. Jerison, Tusker Clark, what gauge and manufacturer is your model railway? Also, aside from this, and your Hellcat, do you have any other models? I have lots and lots of models downstairs. The Hellcat comes from Drac. The models are little plastic ones I make myself, which are all dangling in the air by fish wire, fishing wire, that is, over my 00 gauge railway, which is technically it is LNER LMS. And that's in the garage, and that's got a whole fighter scene going off over it, and it's got a whole load of warships around the wall, around the walls. various things, but the one up in my bedroom is a N-gauge GWR railway, most of which seems to be Graham Farish and Dapol in terms of its things, but also quite a lot of Pico. A lot of Pico track and a lot of Pico other things as well. So, yeah, it's a nice mixture. It's slowly being built. It's, you know, basically, when the book's done, that's going to be far more worked on. Night Heron Production. The following is a follow-up of someone else's question in the previous stream regarding refitting subs cutting into the pressure hull and complicating considering they're going to it. Night Heron Production. USS Scorpion SN 589's loss has never been truly pinned down, but she was part of a drastic cost-cutting experiment on refits. $2 million, 8 months compared to the typical... yeah. That the thing is, with submarines, you cannot cut corners in the nicest way. When you're doing refits on a submarine, you can't cut corners, and actually doing any refit on a submarine is difficult. That's why, honestly, submarines are as expensive as they are. Submarines are expensive because you have to make sure everything is perfect. There is honestly, if you look at the number of people who've died, but I'm not considering the number of people gone down, there's a small thing, but I think the odds are you're more likely to die going down in a submarine than you are up in a spaceship. Because, you know, because of your chances of escape. Which sounds terrible, but I'm not sure if that includes all the Soviets who died going up in spacecraft. Skip over Carnus. What do you think of fictionalized history, in specific the Killer Angels, Michael Cera, the Red Banjo, Courage, and all these things? I've seen Crane. I like anything which gets people into reading history. I like anything which gets people into reading history. I will support anything which gets people into reading history. But I will say also that you have to be careful when when those things are talked about, that you evaluate them as a work of fiction, not a work of historical accuracy. It's like, I like this series, Richard Woodman. I like the Drinkwater series. But the Admiral Duncan in this book versus the Admiral Duncan in reality is a bit more gruffer. You know. It's differences. But they're there. In the bombing of a dock harbour, what would you consider the best practical target? Workshops, rail lines, X? I would say the best thing to hit would be cranes. If I was hitting a dock or a harbour, if it had a fuel store or anything in the remotely explosive or nearby it, that would be my first target. But I'm evil. Well, in the nicest way. Why use one bomb? Many bombs to blow things up when I can use one bomb to cause a massive explosion to blow up lots of things and cause lots of damage. Anything explosive nearby the dockyard will be what I'd be aiming for. Radar range versus visual must have been a huge game changer. Yes, it was. Radar range finding really helps things. Ajax or Ajax? What is the official pronunciation, if there's one? Ajax. Juicy Decision. The former, according to the town named after it. The latter is a football team from Amsterdam. Stromac probably has several ships and a mothership that manages the group and provides the human element. Yeah, that is the thing. If you're doing, if you're having a 3,000 ton unmanned wingman as your warship, you probably have a manned warship in the group sitting around, and that's your backup. So basically, consider them the sloop. Consider them the vessel. You know, you have your 10,000 ton, probably frigate or destroyer, depending on its sort of start, but somewhere in the region of 10,000 tons, and it could well have 3 or 4 buddies with it. Or you have your carrier, which could have 2 to 3 of these 2 to 3 of the manned escorts around it, but then have 6 to 9 of the unmanned escorts around it, and suddenly you have a task force, but you don't have to have as many crew, theoretically. But you don't have to factor in extra crew on the escorts that are manned to go and run out the maintenance on the unmanned ships. So, you know, all these things have to work out, have plus and minuses. Fuel and munitions will be the interesting thing, but again, you could theoretically devise automated systems to get the fuel and fuel across. Munitions, we already have to go to a port to do the uploading. Getting that to work at sea is going to be, again, something. Skippy Africanus, what about the UR naval fiction, the Odyssey and Jason Argonauts? Would you permit that to be qualified as naval fiction? Yeah, go on. Tiberius Claus, Merchant Navy had a higher casualty rate than the armed forces. Yep. And Herald Production, at King's Rook, you're welcome. The Mark 37 torpedo's battery's habit of catching fire in testing may have also been a likely contributor to the loss, given that following the Scorp's loss, it was redesigned. Turning 343, Dustross Clark, opinion on effectiveness compared based on budget. Royal Navy versus Royal Dutch Navy, and which Navy takes the cake of all the world? Ooh. Well, they both do pretty well, but they're being asked to do different things. The Royal Navy's being asked to do global reach and global presence in a way the Dutch aren't. But the Dutch are being asked to do ballistic missile defense and all sorts of other specialist areas. So they both have an interesting sort of role, and it's sort of, they do well in their different roles. But if I was going to war, I'd prefer to be in the Royal Navy than the Dutch Navy at the moment. They have a few more ships. Just a few. Robert Donaldson, thoughts on recovery of gold from HMS Edinburgh or other artifacts from iconic ships, e.g. Hood's Bell? I'm fairly sure if more ships had as much gold on them as the HMS Edinburgh had, we'd have far more detail about what happened to them. John Abbott, my great-grandfather didn't speak his wartime service, even though he served in a rear echelon SC-1069. Interesting. Yeah, they don't. Quite a lot of them don't. My grandfather really didn't talk about his, and he was, he had emphysema. So unlike his siblings and cousins, he couldn't join up, and he was in Firewatch. And he found it really annoying, because he was a semi-professional, practically marathon runner and all sorts of things, but they wouldn't let him join up because of his emphysema. So he did Firewatch and didn't accept any awards for what he did, but he did all sorts of stuff as a Firewatch in World War II. Admiral Mike Lennon. Well, Mike Lennonwood's books are good. Interesting concepts. Guatemalans invading Belize with basically a hodgepodge dream team of SAS Paras, Gurkhas, RM4, Legion, and a Type 23. Ooh, that would be interesting. Sure, Mike. Halsey could bolster morale in a way many of the other people who we consider better admirals couldn't. Yeah, that's pretty much that's the thing. Sometimes you need someone to be morale. Seam White found RN report on HMS Sydney catching SMS Edmund. 3 Germans came out of engine room as the British officers boarded. After a few minutes, their skin started sloughing off. Steam heat exposure. Yeah, steam, high pressure steam is a dangerous, dangerous thing. Bishran, Admiral Halsey did very well in the first part of 1941 to 43, but faltered afterwards, perhaps worn down by the weight of command. Yeah, pretty much great hero, so Navy keeps him, but it's kind of like Somerville, you know. He does good and then he doesn't do good. Weebooks Extraordinaire, thank you for the in-depth answer. That's always a pleasure. Donna Robertson, maybe in your book including Travel Class, include sources, e.g. YouTube footage that, if possible, show what was involved in gunnery, torpedo firing. I would love to, but I don't think I can get a book to be that interactive, but I could try. Tony Bedfold, I'd love to see the demand requisition for Eskimo's new bow. Nomenclature. Tribal cast bow, quantity 1. Oh. And it's the fact it happened twice. Completely new bows, and another one completely... It was reconstructed, and it just, you know... Oh. Her and Durban and Bombay are just have fun. Nubian spends so much, basically turns Bombay into a regular refit thing. This is the interesting thing, is you find some of them. Nubian pretty much adopts Bombay as her place of refit, and she's practically there every other year. It's sort of, oh, Nubian's now in Bombay for a couple of weeks refit. Stephen White, USS Louisville has a turret out in Nevada desert. See article about turret taken off after kamikaze burnout. Removed turret was taken out to desert as observation hut for A-bomb test. Ooh. Mm-hmm. John M. I doubt the naval guns non-support will succeed. It'll buy much more needed improved. NGSW will succeed and will buy much needed improved M4s instead. The new gun system. Yeah. They like new toys. They like new things. Jerison, why not have an HMS Prometheus like in Star Trek, where it splits into 3 with 1-man section and 2 unmanned sections? That is another option, but that sounds a very complicated one. Very, very complicated one. Actually building a ship which splits into 3. New IKB 4472. Hello! How do you think the RM react to HMS Warspite magically appearing riding an anchor off Portsmouth in its late World War II configuration, but otherwise perfect mechanical condition? Shock. But also not quite surprised, because this is Warspite. Basically, if she did appear, it would probably be in with a task force with her. But if Warspite did magically reappear, completely fine. They'd probably go, okay, we've got a modernization job on our hands, everyone. Especially if it's in perfect mechanical condition. Take a battleship. Have to modify her quite heavily to make her mannable in the modern days, but you know. John, next generation squad weapon are both rifle and light machine gun. Congress won't pay for a complete yeah. In nicest way, there are lots of ideas about these new systems and new gun systems. I look at it from the interesting perspective from the fact of ships carrying them and boarding parties and the impact it's going to have on them. And it's what you're going to do with it. Paul Johnson, my other granddad was a fireman in World War II based in Scarborough, so covered Hull and Middlesbrough again. Just said it got quite busy on occasion. Yeah. Jerison, the Kilo 1919. It's a massive mistake. British Army has done the same thing and ditched the Mini-Me and gone back to the GPMG. The problem is that the Mini-Me is terrifying at ranges less than 300 meters. GPMG is also quite good, but the Browning. That used to be quite a good squad weapon. Nice heavy machine gun. Very useful for squads for providing fire support. Keeps everyone's heads down within a long range. Don Robson, please be careful if pressing for details of wartime experiences. RF Navigatrix teacher revealed cracked when flying, lost on I know better than that. Yeah, you have to be very careful. There are a few podcasts on SimSec of me talking with veterans from the Falklands War and actually sort of, in nice ways, sort of interviewing them. But it's very, very careful. And, you know, one of the things historians are taught when we do these sort of interviews, you have to be very respectful, basically. Tiberius Claudius Congress. That's why I said no way they could find enough crew to man Warspite. That's why I said they'd have to do some upgrades. Just a couple. Danny Freeman, re-Warspite appearing in Pompeii 2020. Take the spare. Well, that's one thing you could do. Certainly that could be a start. Lieutenant Dunmont. How well do you think the Royal Navy will cope with patrolling our new fishing grounds, enforcing our channel border, and maintaining our current deployment commitments? Well, the current deployment commitments are the frigates and above jobs, so that I have to sort of, we hope as long as we get the funding through, that's fine. Especially if they can get some Type 31s, more Type 31s than what they're currently ordered, maybe even faster. The rest, that's a combination between Fishery Protection Squadron, the various fishery units of the devolved governments, the Border Force, Customs, and I think also the police have quite a few launches as well. So that's going to be quite a combination effort. Whether it works or not is going to be interesting, but they're going to need to work out how they're going to make it work. I'm sure they have plans. It's going to be how well those plans work and how quickly they can revise them if they don't work. Osprey 28. With minimal crew, you could make a triman that splits in pieces, but it would be... yes, it would be interesting to have it rejoining while at sea. That's the trouble. It's, you know, it's one thing to have it split up. It's another thing to have it get back together. And presumably, if it is together in the first place, it's together for a reason. This transport. A great aunt working in munitions factory as an inspector. She remembers two women who refused to stop smoking whilst filling shells. It didn't end well. Oh, nope. Carl von Klausenberg. Dr. Clark, have you seen RT's Baltic Fleet series about the new Swarovski corvette, the Submarine and the submarines? Yes, I have, and honestly, none of it was new. It was all stuff I was watching going, yeah, I've seen this stuff's been around for a while. This stuff's been coming for a while. We all knew this stuff was going to be here. Actually, this transport, the UK hasn't made tank ammunition in, what, 30 years? And that will be difficult enough to restart. 15-inch would be very difficult. Actually, 15-inch can be easier to restart than tank munitions. Honestly, tank munitions these days are very complicated things. 15-inch is not really complicated in comparison. 15-inch is, I'm 15-inch shell. I have a lot of steel, so I will penetrate armor, if I'm armor piercing, and a very big chunk of metal with a little bit of a fragmentation explosive inside. Or I am a high explosive land bombardment system, which means I'm basically a flying tub of high explosive. God help us all. Don Orson, any modern types over-endowed with weapon systems and or mission profiles, in your opinion? Oh. I worry a lot about the Arleigh Burkes. I do worry about them. I think they get far too much lumped on them. I think they tried to go for a one-stop shop, and I think those poor things get everything lumped on them, when really they are a general purpose destroyer which could back up on anti-submarine warfare and things like that, and they've got lumped with everything. They've got the cruiser role, they've got the destroyer role, and they've got the frigate role, and those poor ships are overworked to the nth degree. But there are a few other classes. The Type 23s get lumped, a lot of them. I think the Chinese are kind of interesting because they're trying to build, they're basically turning into Mercedes-Benz. They're trying to build a ship for every role. And I do wonder how that's going to work, especially with their quality control, which seems to be interesting. But, you know, it's going to be, it's basically, there's a lot of stuff which is quite interesting to watch. Jeppy, would you ever write an Osprey book? If they ask me, yes. Banholm, did you see the Wildcats equipped with 10 Martel missiles? Talk about this. Yes. Well, the Martlet missiles are pretty cool. You can fit them onto a standard 30mm gun mount as well. The Royal Navy's been working on, and so they could be used to upgrade the OPVs quite quickly. So that's the River class and all sorts of things. So you could have Martlet missiles fitted all over the fleet, and they are really quite useful systems. Rich Everton, it's France's fault. That's not true. Yeah. So actually we did. We had Jerison, this is France's fault. That's not true. L28 and L29 training ammo for the L30A1 only came into service in the mid-2000s. So yes, we had some ammunition production. Ooh. Carl von Gasberg, splitting ship. I would try a semi-submersible barge carrier and those few thousand automated wingmen. Oh, that could be hell. Jeff Beeler, favourite naval mysteries? Oh, there's a few. There's a few. Actually, most of the stuff I'm really kind of interested in is some of the stuff that's happened on the Great Lakes. I do look at the Great Lakes quite a lot. Jeff Beeler, can you not pitch an Osprey book to them? You can, but more often than not, Osprey come to you. More often than not, Osprey come to you. Daniel Freeman, re-15-inch gun today. Not going to need AP shell. No one going to have armor against that. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking high explosive probably an option. Yes, they did. Jeff Richardson, has any Navy ever considered using APF SDS Sabre ammo for battleship cruiser guns? They did, but by the time that I actually... It's going to sound strange. By the time Sabre weapons systems guns became practical, Sabre shells became practical, you no longer had the battleship, the battlecruisers really in service. We mix around now. Speaking of naval ammunition, what was thinking behind having the common 6 and 8-inch shells rather than more specialised AP shells used by other navies? Was it a good decision in hindsight? It makes logistics a lot easier. That's the thing. It's logistics. And it depends on your Navy and your possibilities of what they're going to be doing, whether it's more sensible. If you're the Royal Navy, having a 6-inch armour-piercing shell makes a lot of sense if you're going up against something like Grass Bay. Be back in a second, just hearing someone call me. Ooh-wee. Right. Right back. US Navy large autoloader 8-inch. John Emmett, large autoloader 8-inch versus railgun on a new cruiser. I go for the railgun, honestly. Railgun, by the time the new cruiser enters service, should actually be working. Zumwalts were trying to put too new equipment in there too soon. It was always going to run into problems. It was a gamble. And unfortunately, it didn't pay off. But by the time the new cruiser comes in, railgun should be working, and that could be a very useful piece of kit. Nightheader production. Submarine double hulls or single hulls? Which is the one for you? If I'm not mistaken, we Brits still do the double hull construction. We do. And honestly, a double hull is the preferred approach I would have. Daniel Freeman, bring Sabre around for BBs. They are straight line shooting rather than ballistic arc or long distance naval artillery. That is the thing. That's why you don't really have them, but they were considered. Paul Johnson, after Falkland's experience, what do you consider to be best size shell for naval gunfire support? Well, let's be honest. If I had my way, I would be having... Your option is, if you're managing to get it more, I would always prefer a double gun mount. I would like to have 2 main deck guns and 2 guns in each one. So I would like to have a double, sort of a double twin mounting. 4.5 inch or 5 inch would be how I would do it. So each ship would have, especially destroyers, would have 4 guns to provide fire support, and frigates would have 2. But we've gone for single guns approach, and so therefore I would go for as big as I'm allowed to have. So I'd probably go see if we could get a 6-inch or even bigger if possible. Because if you can maintain pretty much the same rate of fire, but you can probably fit a 6-inch in the same amount of space as you can get a 4.5-inch overall sort of system these days. Although I'd still, as I said, prefer a double 4.5 or double 5 if I could get my way, because I think it's the volume of fire you need, especially in the naval gunfire support scenario, because you don't have enough artillery on call. Daniel Freeman, a re-AP 15-inch shell. It would laugh in the face of closing weapons, and the fuse would be set to explode earlier, if not trying to dig deep into the guts of a thickly armed battleship. Yes. Well, let's be honest. If you were dealing with an armoured piercing 15-inch shell and it hit most modern ships, it would probably come out the bottom of the hull. It could come out the bottom of the hull. If it was coming at sufficient pump, it would go in and basically... Which means it would do both the torpedo and the shell job. It would create a hole in the top and create a hole in the bottom, and probably create a fire, but that fire would soon be extinguished by the water coming straight up. And probably go off after it was through underneath the hull, so it would probably break the back of the ship as well. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. Trent Telenka, has anyone looked at a naval vertical launch GML and GMLRS rocket? Seems a low-hanging fruit to get long-range naval fire support. Yes, they have looked at it. Dumb Tomahawk is what I think they were calling it at one point. And the trouble is, once you're dealing with a system which can deal with vertical launch and orientate itself around the target, the differences between it and a GMLRS is already quite significant, and the difference between it and a proper strength-up Tomahawk, well, the advantages of the Tomahawk are for not much more cost. In comparison to that system, you have a far more useful system. Danny Freeman, why haven't they replaced the ammunitionless 155 guns on a Zumwalt with something like 5-inch guns? I don't know. Oh, they probably got a reason. It's probably down to cost. But the Zumwalts are ships I actually really quite like, and I'd like them to have got more support. I wish the gambles had paid off. They could have been very good ships if the gambles had paid off. Jerison, I read somewhere that Warspite wore out 15-inch guns bombarding normally had to have them replaced. Yes. Did the Royal Navy have spares lying around, aside from those allocated for Vanguard during the war? They had lots of spares, 15-inch. They had lots of spares around. Were reconditioning, having spare guns around. It was quite common. Gun barrels wear out. So they'd send them to be relined and refurbished, and then they'd come back into those, basically. As Daniel Freeman's pointed out, Jerison, they relined them and so built and refurbished, relined the barrels on rotation. That was quite a lot of work done to it. It's kind of like the modern Trident missile system, where the Trident missiles go in for repair and reconditioning. Same with gun barrels, same everything. They go in for repair and reconditioning. Jeff Beeler, which Royal Navy constructor said you can only change so much between ship designs without running into trouble? Oh, pretty much every single one. I think it was the successor to Stanley Goodall who really put it on so much detail. But you know, they all were sort of like that. It's only so much you can change before you're dealing with a whole new ship, and you need to make sure you have whole new calculations. See. Osprey 28. You could probably get away with 2 single 8-inch guns on a modern ship. I'm pretty sure the USA tried something with an 8-inch gun on a destroyer. I think that's what they were looking at for the Zumwalts, really. That's what I'd liked. J. Richardson. One had been mounted on the Royal Navy RMS Ramleys, and the other one on both Resolution and Roberts. Cool. Carl van Gaspert, 15-inch AP. The US Air Force got some smart bunker buster bomb fuses, which can be programmed to explode on a given level of a bunker. Ooh, fun times. Jeff Beeler, have you ever met Jingles? Let's see. Sea White, Japanese battleship spells supposed to have enhanced submerged travel. Did it take out any ships with a near miss? I'm not sure, but I do think, as I said, my theory on Hood versus Bismarck is that Bismarck took her out with a near miss, and the shell travelled on the water and set off the 4-inch ammunition. But we haven't found it out and proved it. Don Orson, roll for monitors, maybe towed to battle zone? Possibly. Honestly, I prefer that. You see, the thing is, having a specialist ship is always best for getting 100% solution to an issue. But actually, for maintaining a fleet, especially a fleet which has less hulls and less manpower, you need to have a general purpose system. You need to have that tool. Osprey 28, allegedly because they're still looking for someone to make ammunition for the 155s. Well, let's be honest, you'd want the 6 inches to work if you could. Tis Francis' fault. Zumwalt broke the cardinal rule that the new tech is almost never delivered on time when expected. Yep. Jack Ray, do the Zumwalts have any working weapon systems? I think the Mark 53 VLSs are fully loaded and ready to bear. With very conventional missiles, but that's really wasn't a going surprise. Daniel Freeman, add the Zumwalts. Which systems other than guns didn't pay off? I guess they are like the Seawolf SNs for the Americans. They're good. It's the guns which really didn't pay off. But the trouble is, the guns is what they were built round. New IKB 4472. Could you park an MLRS vehicle on the flight deck of a destroyer for naval gunfire support? Not on a destroyer, but probably could on Albion or Bulwark. Or a Bay class. Trent Delenko, are you aware of a naval version of the US Army's 155 gun millimeter gun in 156 precision guidance kit? Yes, they are looking at that. Jerison, congratulations, you've caught up. Jeffrey at Kings Rock, the RCN does quite well with what it has. For what it needs to do in peacetime, it's fairly well equipped. It's been caught out by refit schedules. That's what the Royal Navy's also been caught out by. What happens isn't so much the refit schedules, it's the surges. Okay? So let's say you have a crisis happen in the world, and you suddenly need to deploy ships there. Well, that will have a ripple impact on crew, on maintenance schedules of the ship that was going in, but also on those ships which are moved around to then cover for it elsewhere because it's supposed to go elsewhere. So the rapid deployment the British had to the Gulf, where suddenly we had to put a second warship out in the Gulf to back up Montrose in patrolling the Straits of Hormuz and protecting merchant shipping, is going to be having a ripple impact on Royal Navy deployments for the next 3 to 4 years. This is the reality of costs of what happens. The thing is, though, what happens is, it tends to be, there will be another incident within that time, which will then muck it up further. And then there'll be another incident, which will muck it up further. So you honestly, unless you build your fleet with enough ships in it, you have some slack. This is why I say the Royal Navy needs 25 escorts, because when I count out the deployments, I come up, we need about 8 available, and therefore if we have 1 extra ship, then you have some slack built in the system. That's where I get my figures for, because 8 available of 24, so if you go through, that's 3, 1 in for every ship forward deployed, you have 2 ships which are either in refit, transit, training, all the other gubbins that can be going on. For every single ship deployed, you have those 2 ships which are going through the process of either coming back from deployment or going to deployment or getting ready for deployment. All those sort of scenarios, you need the extra ships. Okay. Don Robertson, please advise title of your new book and when available. It's not just my new book, it's my first book. It's Tribals, Battles and Darings, and it's currently on Amazon. It's called The Tribals, Battles and Darings, The Birth of the General Purpose Destroyer. And it's December. And it's a very, very cool subject, which I've tried to do justice. John, does it ever annoy you how students will spew stats when comparing weapon systems to each other, rather than evaluating the historical context, such as purpose and doctrine? It doesn't annoy me, because it usually gives me an opportunity to try and explain the context and the doctrine and different things going on, and why a system is actually might look better on paper, but in reality the other system works better. It causes a lot of fun and causes a lot of debate, and that's what I love to do in seminars, and that's what I do sort of things in these lives. Well, let's see. Carl von Gasper, some Russian amphibious do carry the navalized BM-21 grade MLRS. Yes, they do. Distrustful. I would imagine the deck wouldn't appreciate an MLRS back blast. What you would probably do, and this is going to sound interesting, is you'd mount it on one side of the ship, fire it over the ship, so the blast would go over the side of the hull into the sea. But do expect that your ship might move slightly. And Brew. Distrustful. John, 18-inch best gun. Japanese Navy's best? Probably. Not sure about the 18-inch gun being the best gun. I'm still a big fan of 15-inch versus the P8. It works quite well. Osprey 28. When I was looking at the travel model, I noticed that there were a lot of shells in the open next to the rails. Were those ready racks, and why didn't they just put the shells in one place for loading? Yes, there were in effect ready racks, but there were also the fact is they tend to keep them spread out because then they could carry more. Tribal destroyers seem to have adopted the policy of not ignoring history in terms of the battle cruisers, but also you can understand it because they fired fast. They fired first. On average, they could be through the ready-use stores of shells within the first 5 minutes of action. And then they'd be having a continuous running. So you think about that. Your ready stores of action will last you 5. Ready stores will last you 5 minutes, and you know it's very quickly over with. And This is France's fault. We've explored this is France's fault, which is why HMS Furious is the single most powerful thing the Iron has ever come with. No. See one. I think Iron needs a third CV. Is there one more planned? No. My suggestion is actually to replace Albion, Bulwark, and actually Ocean, even though she's already gone, with 3 ski ramp equipped LHDs, i.e. Canberra class, like the Australians have. Something along those lines. Because then that gives you 5 ships and you can move around. I might actually produce a video which is basically an introduction to that and an explanation for it of how the Royal Navy can turn into a good strategy. But that's basically what the Royal Navy did. I don't think they're going to build a 3rd Queen Elizabeth. I'd love them to build an Ark Royal, but I doubt they're going to do it. Basically, I think there's more chance of a Royal Yacht, and I don't think that's particularly high chance. Although I would support it. Jeff Beeler, Gulf War 1991 got the RCN to become more multi-role from ASW specialists. Tribals got area defense missile silos, city-class frigates, Sea Sparrow and harpoons. Yeah, it did. Shormac, any plans for an audiobook? Not sure. We're talking about it. John Emmett, I'm a PhD student and I have to read horribly written or just historically false papers. We've all been there. Jay Rishan, IVSBN for book here. Thank you, Jay. John Emmett, I am ashamed of the state of public education. Look, I'm lucky, I'm UK. And yes, my accent does suggest I have a far posher education than I probably did, but I was a scholarship boy at a private school. But I do teach, I have taught in state schools, and I have taught in GCSEs and A-levels sort of revision camps and all sorts of things over the years, and I have to say, my thinking is the kids are getting better, and the education system is getting better. More than the thing is, it's got problems of it's making sure the kids get consistently good education across the board around the whole country. And there are ways you could go around to improve that, and ways you can go, but things are definitely are heading in the right direction for various reasons. Some of it's to do with the local models and what the people are doing on the local level. And some of it is the national level isn't. It's more complicated than sometimes people would have you believe. Shomak, 16-inch gun is the best gunfight for me. If you're American, I can understand you having a 16-inch gun because that's your more common system. If you're British, it's the 15-inch system gun because it's the most common for you. Basically, the difference between the two is not worth changing between one or the other. But if you're a Navy which has one, you'd stick with that one. Not suddenly have some random 16 inches in the mist or other things. Angus Soshana, with the tumble-down hull, did the US then implement any engineering specifically to keep the Zulmot from rapidly capsizing? Tumble-down hull is actually pretty good. You know, the tumble-down hull in heavy weather states and, you know, high sea states, it's actually very, very good. Steamwhite, and on Naval Mystery, I always wanted to know what happened to Furious's 18-inch gun. Monitor or scrapped? I think they were put into circulation for the monitors, but I'm not sure. They might well have just been scrapped. I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up. New IKB 472, just runs full. Bold a bit of steel plate over the deck. If you let a gap between you plate and the deck, reduce the heat transfer. Possibly. I was sometimes sarcastic. I actually prefer the 15 and 16-inch guns. That being said, big gun go boom. Can't not like big explosion sticks. Yeah, we all like them. They all look lovely. But, you know, it's a case of actually using them. We've explored. They went into Lord Clive and Sister, right? I think so. I think that's where they went. I think they were the same caliber, so they could go in. Andrew Reynolds, it'd be amazing if you narrated your book as an audiobook when it comes out. Oh, I'm not sure. I would probably keep correcting it as I went through. I probably noticed little mistakes which had somehow got through the editing process, and then they would annoy me like anything. I am one of those people. I watch the television programs I'm in, mainly because my mum watches them and sister and I sit there. I have to say, with the stuff I read, stuff I've written, once I've got through all the editing process, once I've got it all done and it's all published, I move on to the next thing and I try and pretend it didn't exist to some extent. Because when I go back, I'll always notice things. Oh, I could have done that better. I could have done that. Oh, I messed up there. I could have done that. I could have done that. Oh, I am my own worst critic by a long, long way. It's one of the things I have fun when people start critiquing my work and they go, this, and I go, do you think I haven't noticed that myself? It's the great way of diffusing anyone who thinks they're having great fun telling you your stuff is wrong. When people are being honestly helpful, I don't mind them critiquing. When they're you can always tell when they're not honestly helpful. When they're the ones who get upset when you tell them, do you think I haven't noticed this myself? John, I'm in the US and writing is not a well-taught or emphasized skill. It isn't. Actually, here's the interesting thing. For me, I'm a contract lecturer. So lowest of the low-ranking university lecturers. And I've worked at the same university for 3 days a week for the last 6 years. At least 3 days a week for the last 6 years. Still not on a permanent contract. Still technically ends for 3 months every year, although I say technically because what they do is they have me put in for hours before and then I get so I do the work and it's all weird. The pay system gets mucked up, let's put it this way. But anyway, one of my jobs there is teaching academic skills to the engineering students, which is teaching them how to write and communicate. And I spend a lot of time doing this. I also teach them history of engineering, so I often combine the two things. So I teach them the history while teaching them the academic side of how to actually do communication skills. And they start off hating the course, and by the end of it, by the time they graduate and they finish their dissertations and all these things, they're going, yeah, that course in the first year, Dr. Clark, that was what really helped us get through the entire degree. Yep. Writing skills will help, and it'll help you get your job. Tony Penfold, are any civil ships designed for military conversion of the ships taken up from trade? Not really so much today, but certainly in the interwar period, prior to World War One, a lot of ships were, especially name a big merchant ship, a big cruise liner, and it was designed to be turned into a merchant cruiser. Wasn't necessarily the best idea. And by gone was the fuel bill extortionate, but they were. Ooh, Stephen Pound. For the 18-inch guns, all 3 were removed from service in 1920 and served as proving guns for cordite tests. 2 were scrapped in 1933, and the last one survived until it was scrapped in 1947. Cool. Oh, if you're talking about writing grammar, if we're going to do that. All right. Okay, so if we're talking about writing grammar, I tend to use Stella Cottrell's the Study Skills Handbook as the one I recommend to students and people who are trying to develop their writing in an academic sense. It's a good one, and I have a couple of others based on this one, but this is my preferred one for using because it's got lots of different stuff in here which is actually useful. So if you are, you know, starting yourself off into the sort of the area of writing, of developing your skills, it's a good book. That's Stella Cottrell's The Study Skills Handbook. I think it's now up to the 3rd or 4th edition even. This is the 2nd edition. Scene White, scene warehouse with 14-inch gun in the naval yard. Records some served on the Arizona since guns reconditioned to replace guns on our ships. Possibly one could have served on a hood. Tis Francis. Speaking of great big guns, do you think the 100-ton Malta could have actually killed anything? Basically, that's a monkeys and typewriters scenario. Stephanie Wilson, fraud syndrome. Never realized their stuff is good because it's not perfect. To an extent. Plus dyslexic, so I've spent my life being told by people what's wrong with my work. It gets in up here. You ignore it as best you can, but it does come through. So you sort of just go, carry on. John, my opinion is that they emphasize STEM and passing tests, not critical thinking or writing. I would agree on the writing. The critical thinking they do emphasize, but I'm not sure if they actually teach them how to express it sometimes, is what I feel. In the UK schools. That's what I worry about sometimes. It's teaching how to express your critical thinking. Sean Mack, my opinion is teaching to test is a real problem, not so much the focus on STEM. STEM can be useful, you know, it's a nice way. Teaching to a test is an issue. The big problem I have with students and when I'm teaching them, and I love them nearly because they do respond to this quickly, but schools don't have the time, because they always have the tests coming up and these things, to teach them about the phrase context. And I worry that sometimes the reason we have lost so much context and nuance from public debate globally is, and especially about politics, and don't seem to have time for context and nuance, is because it's not being able to be taught in school. They don't have time to teach in school. And context is nuance is something you have to start embracing from a young age, really. I was lucky. I have a family who are all about context and nuance. And that's what I've been taught to look at the whole way through growing up. Distrustful. Regarding education, I think many students are too focused and narrow-minded and fail to learn smarter but haven't got more. I'm not so sure, but reading around the topic, and I have to say it's an issue, but also if you had asked me 10 years ago what I thought about YouTube history and a lot of stuff on here, I would have been gone, well, it's good, but it's surface history. And it has got a lot better, but also I've discovered a wider range of people, because 10 years ago, I hadn't really looked in as much. And I still know the number of academics and teachers who I work with who have, since I started doing this, they've come and looked at my channel, but they've also gone and looked at Drax's channel. They've gone and looked at Armored Carrier's channel. They've gone and looked at some of the other channels going around that we talk about. And they're coming back to me, and I'm getting messages going, this is actually really good. This is a really good resource. We didn't realize this existed. We can recommend this to our students. And that's the thing. We have the tools to teach in context. The worry has been making the students read so much books, because apparently that's gone out of fashion. Telling students to read a lot of books and setting them a lot of homework has gone out of fashion. or isn't the standard these days, isn't expected, because they won't do it. Which I'm not really sure about, but I don't have to deal with that problem. I'm a university lecturer, not a school teacher. So when I set a reading list, I expect students to go and read, and if they don't, when they turn up on the seminars, I will quickly work out if they haven't done the reading, and I will quickly make sure they realise to do the reading again in future. You know, that's these things. Stephanie Wilson, a lot of my favourites were not on YouTube 10 years ago. That I think is half the issue. But you know, it has got better. Jay Richardson is massive gun where the barrel was the length of an extra long articular trader. That sounds like quite a lot of guns actually these days. In those times. Staying with additional info on the 18-inch guns. Gun number 1 was lined down to 16 inches and used in cordite proving tests for the 16-inch Mark I gun. It was scrapped in 1947. Ooh, that would have been a very long 16-inch gun. A very, very long 16-inch gun. Jeff Beeler, most amazing surprise found when doing research. Actual surprise, I found some very interesting things in boxes in the National Archives, which I'm not sure I'm allowed to say. In terms of realistic surprises, things, often the stuff I found surprises when I found the connections I didn't realize existed. One of the things, I was doing some research on, as you all know, I've had this theory of the tribals, and I've basically been going on, and I was able to demonstrate quite conclusively they were used as a sort of proving ground for the most aggressive, the better, you know, well, the ones who were considered the slightly better, even more elite officers and NCOs in the destroyers. Even the destroyers also themselves were considered an elite. So they were sort of an elite within elite. And it's only been while doing the book that I have gone through and I have suddenly found, for other things, I've gone, okay, this officer's doing, I recognise that name. Oh, they commanded a tribal. They commanded a tribal. And you're suddenly going through and you're going and looking at every single one of these destroyer flotillas, that these flotillas are being used in these areas. The officers, not just the officer in command now, the officer before that, and the officer who succeeds him, come from tribals. It gets, as they reduce in number, it becomes more. They sort of become fewer. But for quite a big chunk of the time, you're talking about tribal class officers. The officers who are taking command of destroyer flotillas more often than not have served in tribals as a commanding officer, as if that's sort of a proving ground. Bichon, I dug out my college The Elements of Style a few years ago, but Barron's Painless Grammar, which I brought recently, is particularly good for recommending it for kids and adults like me. It has cartoons. Oh, cool. See what? South Carolina Civil War shell. Collector was tapping of a hammer after finding it. Bad mistake. Boom. Ooh. Yeah, do not touch shells. Trent Talenko, do you have an opinion on a BAE Systems Adaptive Deck Launcher, ADL? Seems a good way to get VLS on a minor combatant or refit amphibious ships with it. If it works as advertised, yes. Jeff B, I think you're pointing is the most amazing surprise found when doing research, and is it the girlfriend? Actually, my girlfriend I found at a British Commission for Military History, a new researchers conference in Cambridge. It was the year my mum had just got through cancer treatment, had gone through part of her cancer treatment, and I took my family with me to Cambridge when I was going to be doing my research, and they were staying in the hotel we were staying in. I basically paid as my treat to my mum and sister. I paid for the hotel, drove them there, everything. We didn't have a dog at the time. It's quite sad. We lost Dad, and then we lost the dog, and then Mum got diagnosed with cancer. So we had a very annus horribilis for us a few years ago. And so I'd taken them there, and I met my girlfriend, the girl who is now my girlfriend, at the conference, and she was this amazing thing wandering around who was bright spark and sparking off and had lots of cool ideas and very, very intelligent and just, this amazing thing wandering around in this. And she ended up sitting next to me. And we got chatting. And I, in typical historian approach, went very, very slowly about it. I think I suggested that I asked for her email, not her phone number, and I said I would put her in contact with some Falklands veterans who I'd worked with years ago on my own Falklands history stuff. And that's how it started, and slowly, very, very slowly, progressed from there. So girlfriend wasn't found doing research. Girlfriend was found in a conference in Cambridge. Although we've been in Cambridge since then. Actually, we were friends for a bit, and then we sort of ended up. But let's put it this way: it was I was a very slow person getting into the relationship. Probably moved a bit too slow for her. Well, but that's life. I'm a historian. We think in terms of the hundreds of years. Okay. Bishop, my English was dreadful leaving school. It's been a long personal thing to improve it, but if one thing that hits my confidence, don't worry. English is English, and please do take this note. I am very happy as ship research editor for Global Maritime History. If anyone wants to publish stuff which is vaguely about ships and would like to go through some, you can always, if you can track me down on Discord and talk it through me, I'm happy to read through and edit stuff. That's the entire reason I do the stuff I do with Global Maritime History, is to try and encourage people who haven't yet written stuff to write stuff and makes the process as nice and as enjoyable as it can be. Donna Robson, if only a new tribal could be built per the Tornado steam train. What a good use of lottery money. Don't worry. Drac has promised me after he's finished building HDS, that's his Drac's ship, Thunderchild, we will then work on a tribal class destroyer. Okay? So Thunderchild first, it comes from the shed, then it'll be a tribal. Bichron, Tids Transfer, I learned to write by reading. Really good letters to editor by reading. That's a good start. I'd say some good books are a good place to start to learn how to write. See, right, Atomic Annie, why not battleship with 280mm atomic shells? Oh, good lord, that sounds like overkill. Tis France's fault. The British 18-inch was a very heavy shell too, if I remember correctly. It was incredibly heavy. John Ant, I was surprised to learn in October 1941, General Marshall briefed several journalists and stated the war would literally start in April 1942, started by the Japanese in the Marshall Papers. I'm not surprised. Marshall did like to predict these things. Osprey 28. So how did you meet Drac? Well, we've actually discussed this in one of the bilge pumps. Basically, interesting enough, I work with his brother, and I work at the university. He's been taught by my sister. We've actually never met in person, though. We've just made sort of friends over YouTube and Twitter and internet and been chatting non-stop. So it's probably safer for the world we haven't met in person yet, because who knows what we would come up with. Sure, Mac, my problem is my handwriting has always been terrible. Yep, that's actually called something, and I have it. It's called dysgraphia. Bad handwriting has a phrase, has a definition, and it can be caused by many things. My dysgraphia is caused by my type of dyslexia. I have a very rare form of dyslexia. It's called short-term memory dyslexia. And basically, it's a part of my brain that doesn't work like the rest. So basically, if you can imagine me as a computer, my RAM, my random access memory, doesn't work that well. It's a bit da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. But in good news, my hard drive is solid state, top of the line. But it takes sometimes a bit longer to get there in that. So as long as any information goes into my permanent long-term memory, I'm really, really good. And I will never forget it. So every cringe-worthy moment in my life, I can remember in full technicolor detail. But this lack of RAM means that when my brain's processing and I'm writing, if I'm doing handwriting, my hands can't keep up with my brain, and it turns into literally a squiggly line, and it almost turns into a straight line after all, which is why touch typing is good, because it forces me, A, to slow down a bit, and B, it speeds up enough the process that it actually evens out and I can keep it going quite well. So luckily, thanks to my mum, who taught me, I am a touch typist. Which was fun when I was put into exams, allowed to use a computer for my handwriting and exams. So instead of me having to do them by hand in sort of the written exams, and they gave me extra time because I'm dyslexic, but also I'm a touch typist. So you can imagine what reams of stuff came out. Tony Penfold, you talked about the tribal commander selection. Was this the same for other senior staff on lease ships? Any of them significant careers? No books wise. Several. The battleships, battle class definitely, the daring class most certainly. It's very rare you find officers who've been selected to command these ships do not go on to senior rank, and if they do, it's because they've done something really, really silly. Stan Thompson, I'm working on a model idea for a modern battlecruiser. Once I get it typed, would love your feedback if possible. More than happy to. Please track me down on the Discord. It's Greg Starsky. I don't think they can ship Iron Brew fast enough for you and Track to be in the same place at the same time. There is a pub in Surrey which does have Iron Brew. We will go there. It's either that or I will take him up to Newcastle. A, for the Tyne and Weir archives, and B, for Punk Pizza, which does have Iron Brew on tap, and we'll do a haggis on a pizza. And you have to try haggis on a pizza once in your life. At least once. Just as... Jerison, I've noticed that people with messy handwriting tend to be smarter or at least more knowledgeable. My thesis is that those who focus more on handwriting focus less on lessons. Possibly. I'm not sure, but that's an interesting idea. This transfer, I also have dyscalculia too. It's fun. My sister's dyspraxic, and she's a civil engineer, so she has really fun with the fine motor skills. Carbon gas mode. Jerison, only the Almighty and I can read my handwriting. I'm not always. Yeah. My girlfriend said something similar about her own handwriting the other night. Vision. Newspaper letters are difficult to write, expressing complex idea about high-speed rail, national policy, or naval policy in 150 to 200 words to a general audience. It's pretty good, hard. Okay, Stephanie Wilson, the Shormac. There are loads of lessons online for touch typing. It's as important skill as handwriting these days. It is. My mum was head of personnel and training for Lloyd's Register, the shipping insurance firm. Must have been in the 60s and 70s. Anyway, when she had my sister, she had to quit work. Various reasons. And when we found out I was dyslexic and I was going to need to use a computer, she basically sat me down and went, right, and you're learning to touch type. And I was 11 at the time, went, yes, mum. And she taught me everything. And I learned how to touch type very quickly, thanks to her. She's an amazing high-speed typist. She still is. Honestly, if I could have handed my work off to her, she would have typed up the thing probably in half the time I did. I'm quick, but she doesn't even have to look. I don't have to look at the computer, I have to admit, to touch type now, but she can be having a full-blown conversation on the phone, have the television on, typing completely, and everything will be word perfect every single time for thousands upon thousands upon thousands. Okay, Steamer. Okay, accent and telephone got me therapy like stammer. I talk better on keyboards. Faster speech in college makes me take theatre. So about 40 plays later, I do stage good. That's good. Donald Robinson. Perhaps rendezvous with Drac at Turbina in the Newcastle Museum. Yeah, well, that's Newcastle Museum is where the Tyne and Weir archives are. That's the interesting thing. To get to the Tyne and Weir archives, you go into the museum. You go underneath Turbina. Go up to the back. You will see a model in a glass case of a battle class destroyer, a 1942 batch battle class destroyer. You'll turn left in front of that. You'll go through the doors, past the stairs and a lift, and you come to this long corridor. You turn down a long corridor, then you turn right again, and you come to these big double doors. And you knock, and they let you in, and it's this little reading room, and they have all sorts of things, and they will get you their archives, and they are lovely people. It's wonderful. Stafford Thompson, it's a pleasure. Sure, Mac, I can touch that, but most people know who program can't do it, which shocks me. It does shock me as well. I teach some IT history as well at King's Union, and that worries me when they don't do it. Angus the Sun on haggis on pizza blinks. What fresh madness is this? I had a haggis, a pepperoni, and bacon pizza. It was lovely. It was crispy bacon too. It wasn't bacon, which is still, sometimes you get on a pizza, bacon on a pizza, it is left and the fat's still not done properly and it's still a bit soggy and all sorts of. No. The fat, they had begun crisping the bacon before they add it to the pizza, and it was good. It was really properly crispy bacon. Beautiful though. It really, me and Punk Pizza it's a happy place for me. The only problem is that they are hundreds of miles from my home, but I will get there. Back in a second. Hearing someone call me. Right. Newcastle is not rough. Newcastle is lovely. I have family who live in Glasgow. Trust me, Newcastle is lovely. It's wonderful. Jeff Beeler, other than Clap, what senior Falklands commanders have you met, and what is your impression of them? Pretty much every one of them. I even chatted with Sandy on the phone a few times and exchanged many emails with him over the years. Sandy was brilliant. Kind of funny though, because when I first started talking to him, because I was at the time a very master's student, I think, very much his method of preaching most people, because he was so used to being such a senior officer, was to treat them as if they were junior officers and basically giving them orders. And I learned very quickly, I got a bit of advice from actually Michael Clapp going, what you say is you say my intentions are so-and-so. And then a senior officer, that's the cue to a senior officer, that unless you are completely wrong, they let you go and do it. And ever since, I copied that policy. It's good. And it, you know, I've chatted with Sharky, I've met Julian Thompson on many occasions. They're lovely. They're lovely people. Yeah, the women who'll scare you in Newcastle. Yeah, I had my bodyguard with me. John Emmett, just look what the Highland descendants did to Ferguson at King's Mountain. Possibly. But it is a lot of fun. Actually, while I've got you all here, and while I'm chatting away, so, as you'll know, basically tomorrow I will go through all the suggested topics on the Patreon account, pick out 4 and put them into a vote to pick the top 2 that will actually be done. But so far, for July, we have it as it's outlined. Thursday the 2nd of July, Back Pocket Cruisers, done properly. Tribals, Battle and Daring Class Destroyer Stories. Monday the 6th of July is Blank Bone, because that's waiting for the Patreon. Thursday, 9th of July, Flying Boats and Seaplanes, Mothered by Capability or Necessity. Thursday the 14th of July, some more Admirals, Engineers and Historians. Thursday the 16th of July, Naval Diplomacy, more than just the tale of empires and gunboats. Monday the 20th of July is again Blank, waiting for the patron. Thursday the 23rd of July, From the Sea, Korea, Indonesia and the Indonesian confrontations. I think that's probably going to get a bit modified, but we'll see what comes. Tuesday 20th of July, Making Mare Nostrum a Hollow Jest, our own submarines in the Mediterranean. And Thursday 30th of July, Pre-Tribals, the RN's destroyer force before. Ty Joyce 1971. Wow, I've been dysgraphic my whole life, and I've never met another dysgraphic before. We are rare, but I'm dysgraphic and dyslexic. And I'm short-term memory dyslexic, which is, as I said, fun. Jeff Beeler, ever met Chris Keeble or Skekin Para? Not really for a conversation. I think I met him. Yeah, I'm fairly sure I chatted with him over the phone. I know I've recorded. You'll find on SimSec, there's a whole load of podcasts I've done with them, including Chris Keeble and various others, on SimSec in the Falklands War series of the Sea Control series. And you can find them all, listen to these podcasts, which are me chatting away with them. It's worthwhile going and listening because they are so cool people to talk to. And there's basically me just shutting up and just going, just talk, and I will be your safety net. That's basically how I operated as. Jeff Beeler, R.D. Armstrong Archives in Newcastle. Tyner Weir Archives. Jay Emworth, Dr. Clark, I must leave for work now. But it'll be another lovely Bru Ships. Until next, good evening. Take care, Jay. Andrew Reynolds, you're an excellent teacher. I have not watched your Royal Navy before, beyond World War One before. I found your channel. Now I'm, of course, a travel class fan. Came via Drax channel. Kudos to him. I'm glad. Tony Penfold, any previous RN hulls, given a modern weapons and sensors, would complement T-45, 31 and 26? Well, what that mix really needs is more of the hulls they've got. But if I was going to pick something to back them up, honestly, I'd be tempted by HMS Renown. Yeah, it's going to sound strange. You'd expect me to go for probably a battleship or a cruiser or something like that. But actually, HMS Renown battlecruiser is actually what you sort of be tempted by, because you need a presence ship. You need a big presence ship. That's what Britain does need at the moment, and it doesn't have one. And that is what a battlecruiser is. It's all about presence. But the other option, probably a more practical one, would be to go for something... County-class destroyers might be a good one to go for. County-class destroyers, probably. Be nice to have some double guns back. Donna Robson, your thoughts on Hood? Interesting. Real low in the water normally. Assume at speed when closing Bismarck would drive even lower. Yeah. John Howard, also introduced to you by Drac. Thank you. Drac has been very kind to me in introducing a lot of people to me. It makes me work even harder because I don't want to let his recommendation down. Danny Freeman, read lineup for July. Sounds good. Yep, as I said, the only two missing are the ones which have been selected by the patrons. Disgruntled, don't worry, I've worked it out. Sanford Thompson, tough choices for the Discord. All sound good. Looking forward to them. Yeah, actually, the Discord was the interesting. Discord has produced a couple of those, and you can actually tell which ones. But the two major ones which come from Discord, of course, are the seaplanes. It was seaplanes they're asking for, and I added flying boats into it. I have to say I modified what was being there because I thought what they meant was looking at flying boats as well as seaplanes. So I added them in. And there was all these things going about submarines. And I thought, well, doing the whole war in one video for the Royal Navy submarines is pretty difficult. But, you know, it would be a massive video and it wouldn't really be able to go into the level of depth I like to do. But, you know, making Mare Nostrum a hollow jest, submarines in the Mediterranean, that's a good one. That's an interesting topic. So I took that and adapted them, basically. I took the Discord ones. Night Heron Productions. Irishman seem to be currently developing a number of very deep sea subs, of which any deployable from other subs seem to borrow a page out of Operation Sandal. They're doing that. Given that a loss of intel is still passed around sea cables, these subs clearly pose a threat. What measures do you think we need to take? Honestly, you're going to need to sink the motherships. That's the only way you're going to protect them. And when you say a lot of information, you have to remember undersea cables account for 95% of global communications traffic. Yeah, we like to talk about satellites, but the amount of data they carry is really very, very small. Vast majority goes by undersea. Vast, overwhelming majority goes by undersea cables. Jake Beeler, have you met any Malvinas Wars veterans? Yes, I have. Malvinas War, the Falklands War / Malvinas War. I actually organised a conference which was called, well, I didn't organise it. My girlfriend and I organised it together, and frankly, my main bit was doing the web stuff and helping out with some of the organisation, as she is an absolute amazing demon at organisation, and really she did take the lead in many other stuff. So it was the Falklands Malvinas 37th anniversary conference, and we had people from both sides there. We didn't have as many veterans as we wanted from the Malvinas, from sort of the Argentine side, but, you know, tyranny of distance played a part, and budget. Zephyr Thompson, also, HMS Hyder is approximately 75 kilometers from me. Haven't been able to get down to her this year, though. We'll try to borrow from my brother's camera to get some pictures of her for you on the channel. That'd be very kind of you, Stafford. Very, very kind of you. Jeff Beeler, QE and POW don't have presents. Okay, so I have an answer to this, and it's written in my book, strange enough, about the Queen Elizabeth class and carriers having presents. Because, you know, being me, I couldn't leave it all completely. So I have a section in the conclusion entitled The Modern Royal Navy. And let's see. Let's see if I can find it. Naval diplomacy. Sorry. It wasn't in the section I thought it was going to be. It was in, I moved it. Right. Finally, there was the transition. As has been mentioned, with the Darings, they were there for the end of the big gun era. Well, the end of World War II was the beginning of the end, with the RN having to work out what a peacetime carrier-centric navy would look like. What would it need? How would it conduct naval diplomacy? This last part was especially important with the fracturing world being further complicated by the newly emerging superpower dynamic over and above the existing global and regional power system which governed the world for the previous century or so. Pre-World War II naval diplomacy was simple port visits when nothing was wrong, just showing the flag and building relationships, sort of friendships even. Whatever they're called, these would serve to build a bridge of understanding to help solve crises, as well as to help promote British interests, occasionally both at the same time. When it went slightly wrong, on a domestic level, in a minor nation in Africa or Asia or South America, depending upon the status of the nation or a sloop or a light cruiser would be sent. It would be gleaming whites, the crew would be well drilled, a dinner would be hosted, and diplomats would get to talk with the important people. If that didn't work, or rather did not resolve to the British government's satisfaction, usually including the station, then a heavy cruiser showed up and repeated. If this was not working, then a small force of cruisers, usually including a station flagship, would arrive. The admiral or commodore, depending upon the station, would host the bigger party, with even more senior people involved. It was always smart power, and usually governments understood the next thing to show up was a battleship or battle cruiser, with the attendant likelihood that they were probably didn't have anything which could stand up to that. The purpose was normally not to overroar with sheer power. In fact, the first approaches were carefully calculated to not be so blatant as to send something overwhelmingly powerful, hence the preference for sloops and light cruisers. Powerful units, yes, for their size, but most nations possessed either enough cumulative force or even individual units that could defeat them. They were a reminder of the fleet across the horizon. They weren't the threats, the fleet was at your door. As such, they were an opportunity for diplomacy. Next levels above were threats. They were transitions from something which could almost be regarded as de-escalatory to something which was the equivalent of a heavy gun or gauntlet being dropped. They were the embodiment of might. However, post-World War II, the RN had lost battleships. Its cruiser force was weak, and frankly, it was having trouble getting enough small ships mobilized to do the normal meet and greet of naval presence. Furthermore, the new capital ships' aircraft carriers were not really as powerful sitting in another nation's harbour under their guns and unable to launch their aircraft. In fact, they were really their most intimidating when they were unseen out at sea, just using their air groups to conduct displays. That, though, kind of display is often a bit heavy-handed for diplomacy, unless it is a really dire situation. The other big World War II success, submarines, are not much help either, really, because their capabilities, their very reason for being, is stealth. It's being an ambush hunter. Again, going into a port negates that, as would trailing up and down on the surface in sight of land. This means navies post-World War II had a problem. And that's what you're sort of going on. That's the problem with carriers. You can't use them for the diplomacy. Staff Thompson, working on a battle cruiser from a Canadian perspective. Interesting. Sean Mack, also from Drac. Hello, Sean. I think we, yeah. Calvin goes with Don Drac sends his regards. He is the Don, yes. Refuse. Felix B. Drax, or how can we call Drakies, or how can we call ourselves? John Emmett. Would the mid to late American standard BB have been better if speed increased to match QE class? Yes. But then British would have worked far more on making the QE class even faster. They already did. You know, the big engine rebuilds on the Warspite and Queen Elizabeth in the interwar period. A lot of power shoved in them. Jeff Beeler, repeat question because I missed the answer. What would you name the free Clamber Clark LSD flight deck ships? You mean sort of the free LHDs, Canberra LSDs? I would probably name them. Well, there are options, but I would probably go with Fearless, Intrepid, and Illustrious. Just to make the point. Fearless, Intrepid, and Illustrious, probably. Maybe something else, but probably those. Maybe it would be, I would go very traditional battleship names, i.e. Royal Sovereign, Royal Oak, Ark Royal, if I could get away with it. But, you know, I think I'd probably have to go Fearless, Intrepid, and Illustrious. Tis Transform, have you ever been aboard HMS Trimcomley? No, I haven't been aboard her. Jerison, that was a carrier webinar. Oh, cool. Jeff Beeler, Unbroken by Alistair Mars was my introduction to the RN Mediterranean submarine warfare. There is a lot of stuff out there. Jeff Beeler, I'm now planning a trip to HMCS Haida. It's about 250 kilometers from me. Also the sub HMCS Observatory. Anyone been to either lately? I haven't been to either of those. I keep wanting to go to Haida, but I haven't actually. Then does Fluffy Research Assistant need walking? At the moment it's raining, so at the moment no, but probably will do in a bit. So it's you've probably got about another half an hour I can probably push it for. Seeing as he's not been woofing too much. He's mainly complaining that the biscuit supply is being rationed. King's Rook. Jerison, I will have to go walk her soon though. She can hear the church bell toll 9 and will sit and crush me until I take her out to see the horses. Sounds like a very sensible doggy. Don Robertson, has China become the RN's most concerning potential enemy? The RN has a joy in that it has three. Russia is the most direct threat to the RN, but they're not likely, but they are the most threats you have to think about them in terms of their submarine force and some of their surface ships, if they did go nutty. The Chinese are the major threat to our allies. And let's be honest, if America or Australia end up in a firefight with the Chinese, we'll be going along. We will. There are people who might say, oh, we might not, but yeah, we would. Iran is the big problem in terms of the Straits of Hormuz, but Iran is not so much a likelihood for war as I think they realise that there's a line they can't really cross, but they are certainly a threat. And then, of course, we have Argentina, which we hope won't repeat the Falklands again, but we can't afford to discount them not trying it again. Okay. Jerison, Richard, I'm sitting on an crush meat. She's 60 kilograms. It's about the same as mine. Mine's a black mine is a party standard poodle, so full size poodle. Before that, we had a black standard poodle, and before that, we had cocker spaniels, and so we've had lots of fluffy research assistants. So I'd say this is about the Mark 5, Mark 6 fluffy research assistant. Jonas, next 3-4 class should be named Saratoga, Lexington, Yorktown. Should be, but I doubt they will be. They'll probably continue the president's theme, although at some point they're going to probably run out of presidents. Jerison, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, and UK versus China. Who wins? I think you're missing one signatory from the 5 powers there. And it depends what type of war you end up fighting. If you're fighting a war down at the very end of the South China Sea, at the furthest reach of Chinese logistics, and you're literally fighting in that area, you might well find that the British, the Allies sort of alliance wins. But also, in the nicest way, if you've got Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, and UK versus China, you can guarantee the US is coming along to that party. And that means probably Japan as well. And that's just gonna... the Chinese, they're gonna have a... That's not gonna be fine. Jerison, mine is a Newfoundland. Slightly bigger, but very lovely. I do like Newfoundlands. Newfies are cool. And... Greg Stowski, every time the Argentine government has popularity issues, they ramp up the Falklands Directorate. It's actually more complex than that. The Alas Malvinas issue, my girlfriend's the expert in this, and she really is the expert. I mean, she's done more research than anything anyone else has done on it, and she's by far and away the best that's done it. And I listen to her talking about this, and I'm just sitting going, wow, you know your stuff. And I'm not really surprised she knows her stuff, but, you know, sometimes it sort of rolls over you in ways sort of going, wow. I hope I have a similar effect when I'm talking about destroyers to her, but I doubt it, because destroyers is sort of, yeah, it's slightly less than being able to translate perfectly in your head multiple languages and get it right, the syntax and the context and all the nuance and transfer across, but that's what she does. But the stuff, it's a very complicated, it's so much shrouded into the Argentine national identity. It's not just about governments trying to solve issues with an outside cause. It's also something which is built into the Argentine sort of national identity in a way. John Emmett. The wife has not authorized the funding for a canine fluffy research assistant. She wants a feline research assistant. Get both. If you get them as a puppy and a kitten, they'll always be friends and you won't have any problems. Gordon Collins. We have a fluffy tribal class, but sadly she doesn't like water. Oh. Paul from Chicago. Iron Duke is the name of the flagship. Thoughts? It's always nice to have it as the name of a flagship, but honestly, it's not really my personal choice to have the Duke of Wellington as the name of flagship. I think it should have been Nelson or something like that. Machalotes, one of the 4 class carriers will be the Enterprise, from what I've heard recently. It should have been the lead ship of the class. Yeah, should have been, but it won't be. Galvan Gazberg, South Korea getting involved always depends on what North Korea is getting up to. Remember, they have to watch them first. King's Rook, and a token Canadian effort against China in that scenario. It depends. If you, how far along are you in the Type 26 procurement? Because I think you could end up with a combined Type 26 force doing a lot of rocking in that way. We're all glad, John Mammoth, that Enterprise is still a standing CVN name. Tiberius Congress, Greg Salsky, standard dictatorial practice, foreign distraction. It's complicated, but yeah, part of it. It's Francis' fault. Excluding the farm dogs, my most beloved dog many, many years ago was a border collie. She's a good dog. Even before though she ate all my toys if I left alone for a couple of hours. Yeah, they do that. Mitch Lotes, 4 class carriers, 50 years of bad car jokes. Just as long as they don't name one USS Galaxy, we're fine. Andrew Reynolds, I would love to see another US Wasp. Seth Thompson, Dr. Clark, chance of the RN building a surface combat vessel larger than Type 45 in the near future. Also, do you think a larger Burke would be due for the States? I have a feeling it's going to be a combination of Burke and Zumwalt, which is the CGX. So it will be larger. And for the Royal Navy, it's one of the reasons why I'm sitting there where people keep going, the Type 46 or 47, the replacement for the Type 45 will be based off the Type 26 or the Type 31. And I'm going, no, it won't. It'll probably be bigger again. It will be bigger again because by the time we're replacing Type 45s, railguns are going to be part of the equation. And Britain is probably going to want to include railguns. And to include railguns, you are going to need a pretty serious power plant. And you're going to need space for the railguns. So that's going to make your ship big. Because railguns were what drove the size of the Zumwalts. Right. John Emmett. I might name a dog after Patton. Expected to conquer France occasionally then. Tony Penfold. Type 26 Batch 2. What improvements over Batch 1 would you have? Batch 1 hasn't entered service yet, so I'm not really sure. And Batch 2 is going to be ordered probably before Batch 1 even enters the water. But if I could have my way, a double gun on the front would be the starters, a twin mounting. I'd love a double twin, but you know, we won't get it. But I would like to have them more naval gunfire support, and I would like them to be slightly longer. But that's me. Tattoo 2, don't forget to like the video, everyone. That's very kind of you. Tiberius Colodus, time to fasten up the ducks. Good night. Good night. Zephyr Thompson, why my BCG is 860 foot long, 168 foot beam. Nice. Yeah, she did get drunk once or twice. I'm not sure what's going on in the discussion with King's Rook there. But that could be an interesting one going on there. Jennifer, is there really much between batches 1 and 2 on the RN's Type 26? There's not going to be much between them. They're going to be pretty much the same. Michael Mitchell, $3 billion for a Zumwalt DoD. Back in the day, that would have brought you a complete Trident SSBN. Okay, with the Zumwalts, you have to remember it's the command and control interface technology, the Mark 50 Velias, the stealth technology, all the new power plant control management systems, all the stuff spent on the rail guns, all sorts of things which is folded into that price tag. So consider them a Christmas tree system. It's kind of like the Comanche. Okay, the Comanche, the RH-64, isn't going to come into service ever now. It's been dropped for too many years. However, the technologies that have been developed for it have been folded into a lot of things since. And that makes life interesting. So you have these programs which develop them, and then they might not get used in that program, but they can get folded into other systems and other equipment, and it reduces the cost of those, but also keeps your development industry going, and it provides you with a technological boost when you need it. Samuel, Type 26 Batch 3 when? Well, that's the idea. The Type 26 Batch 3 is supposed to be the Type 45's replacements, but I doubt that. This is Fran's. The dog got drunk. She liked to sneak in to drink beer. It left unguarded. She was usually stopped before she had too much. Oh, I can imagine that being quite fun to deal with. Stereotypical, what is a sea-based ship and the strategy behind it? Okay. Sea basing is when you can operate from the sea. So technically, and land forces can operate from the sea. Technically, an aircraft carrier is a sea-based ship because it's providing air support to operations ashore or airstrike. Usually when we're talking about sea basing, we are talking about an LHD or something which can land deploy forces. So instead of them having to operate from the land, build a base ashore, they can pretty much operate from the sea seamlessly. LHDs are very good at this because they can provide helicopters for light strikes. They have the airstrike package of the fixed-wing aircraft, especially their Canberra sort of style with ski ramps. And you have F-35Bs, and then you have landing craft or hovercraft, which can take in heavy stuff. Senator Johnson, could you clarify, is Type 26 a frigate or destroyer? I had a discussion with my brother about it last week. It is a frigate. It is an anti-submarine warfare ship. I know you're basically, if you're Royal Navy, it's a frigate straight for anti-submarine warfare. If you're the Canadians, they are calling them destroyers because they are so much bigger in comparison to the Halifax class or City class, and so that's what they're going for them. But they are frigates in the Royal Navy form. I think if in the more general purpose form, you can make an argument for them being called destroyers, or smallish destroyers at least. Carl von Gassenberg, if US Congress would and could allocate the buck, Zumwalt unit price would go way down. That's the other thing as well. The often debate I get told by people is, oh, Daring class destroyers are billion-pound destroyers. They're billion-pound destroyers. And I go, no, they're not. Actually, the unit cost for a Daring class destroyer, modern one, is about 400 million, maybe slightly less on average. The rest of the money is made up by the cost of development, and the cost of development was developed and assigned based on them building 9 to 12 ships, and then they end up building 6. So of course the cost per unit of the program goes up. But don't consider the cost per unit to be the same, the unit program per cost to be the same as the cost per unit. Okay? So the program cost per unit could be £1 billion to destroy. But the unit cost, the individual cost of building that unit, could be 400 million or less because of the cost of doing the research and development and the science and all the stuff that goes behind it. To make all the systems working, because you have thousands, tens of thousands of systems which have to be built to work together. Okay, Tony Pamela, thanks for all the answers. Have a good night. Thanks for the book recommendations. It's a pleasure. Vision, if I'm correct, the US Navy plans to use the Zumwalt design as basis for a new large surface ship, so the R&D won't be wasted over long term. Like to see a longer hull with stern 5-inch gun? Possibly. Possibly. Skippy Africanus, is there anything to retain from the US littoral combat ships? Does this mean the modular design is sunk, at least for now? It's not if you look at the working options. Stanflex works very well. LCS tried to go for a gold-plated version and it's caused issues. I think they could make it better. Jerison, I have to go for the walk now as I have started to lose feeling in my legs. Good night. Good night. Take care and good luck with the dog puppy. Stafford Thompson, thank you. My thoughts were along with yours. He's saying with their destroyers because we're replacing our old ones with them, and all I could do was shake my head. The Halifax class are frigates. The Tribal class were destroyers. Interesting enough. And it's basically about what they're built in. And as far as how does the Zumwalt handle strong crosswind? She's rather slow-sided. She actually does it quite well because she has quite... Her superstructure is quite truncated compared to the rest of her size. Kingsrock, I wonder what the cost breakdown for the LCN Type 26 is. Well, you'd have to go through the program and work it out. But probably not too different to the British one. The 222. How do anti-submarine ships kill submarines nowadays? Still with depth charges? No, torpedoes. Homing torpedoes, but usually it's homing torpedoes, and sometimes depth charges actually, but homing torpedoes dropped by helicopters. Usually you have the surface ship towing a massive towed sonar array, which can detect a long way around, and you have a helicopter popping around to things detected by the towed sonar array to drop sonar buoys, or even drop its own dipping sonar, listen, and go, pop, here's a torpedo, while it's miles away from being within torpedo range of the actual surface ship. It's preferable. And you can have multiple helicopters working with the same ship, which is why an aircraft carrier is such a useful tool. So when people tell me, oh, the aircraft carrier is going on, so I go, well, what's going to carry all your anti-submarine helicopters? Because you can mount maybe one or two on most frigates. You need a lot more than that if you're going to do proper anti-submarine ops around a carrier. Shulmack, don't forget the ASW fixed wing assets. I won't, but usually they're launched from land now, and their operations with the fleet can be interesting. But they do tend to work. But you know, they're slowly getting back into service. Staff Thompson, well, I could only shake my head as he thought we still had a couple of Iroquois left in service. Oh my, that's been a long time. Bitron, does the US Navy have towed sonar? Yes, it does. On lots of ships. Many of the Marley Burks, including. Carl von Gasman, unit cost, R&D costs, and infrastructure costs are all built into the program costs. Spare parts, yes, everything. Plus, there's all sorts of maintenance contracts and other things. In the nicest way, when someone tells me what a takes the whole program costs and goes, divided by that and goes, that's £1 billion ship or whatever, I sit there and worry. It's like when we hit, people start selling there's a £3.3 billion aircraft carrier. I go, no. There's a lot of stuff which goes on. It is costing £3.3 billion per aircraft carrier, but actually it isn't costing that much to build the aircraft carrier. That's not the unit cost, that's the whole program cost. So you've got to think about it. Sometimes the way to make these things cheaper is to work out the program costs, and sometimes it's still more, actually. Daniel Freeman, QEA Wing sounds like it's planning to have about 9 Merlins for ASW work. Probably more, because what the British are going so far on the sort of the approach is very much they're going, Merlins are airframes, and we'll be able to swap in and out capabilities depending on what we need them for. So whilst, yes, some are going to be largely anti-submarine warfare airframes, and some are going to be commando airframes, and some are going AEW airframes, you're probably going to find them slotted in and out depending on what the greater need is for. Skippy Africanus, up or down vote, Hornblower or Aubrey, and why, how was works functions? I'm partial to Forrester. I thought that the relationship between captain and surgeon in Master and Commander was unrealistic. As I said earlier, my favourites are the Drinkwater ones. I like both of those. I do find them interesting, but I think the best ones are the Richard Woodman, Nathaniel Drinkwater series. Very good. We've had tow sonar arrays since World War II. To be fair, they've been around. Do you know what a rotodyne is? Because they seem like they could have had an interesting use by the Navy. They are pretty much early versions of helicopters. That's the easiest way to talk about them. King's Rook. All the Iroquois class ships have been scrapped, sunk as reefs. Yep. Steamlight. Japanese sonar was actually used to detect USN airstrikes. Sound through air down to the sea is detectable. It is. Yes, it is. Disturbing enough. Daniel Freeman. Dr. Clark. I have visions of a Merlin going off with the wrong weapons kit aboard and accidentally dropping some RM commanders on an enemy submarine. Let's be honest. Would you like to be the submarine, which is suddenly having knocks on its doors going, Royal Marines coming aboard? That could be actually a new generation of anti-submarine warfare. We'll drop a Marine on you. You have a Royal Marine in a tight, confined space. Oh, that's not good. That's not good. Yep. Weave Extraordinaire. I have to leave now. Just leaving a comment as a bookmark so I can pick up where I left on the VOD later. Thanks for work. I just found out your articles on the tribals over at Global Maritime History. I enjoyed. They are quite fun. Danny Freeman, Greg Saratsky and Alexander Clark. Or you could quad pack Gurkhas. That's just cruel to submarines. Royal Marines are bad enough. Quad packing Gurkhas is just not nice. That's just being nasty. As Greg Saratsky put, that is not considered cruel and unusual punishment to the submarine. I don't know. Right, so I'm going to say I'll go about past. So that's about 12 minutes roughly time. So any last questions? Nighthand production. No, so no. If you had 1943-44 ASW countermeasures, i.e. things like Hedgehog, all the things barring Bletchley Park's Enigma success in 1939-40, how badly affected is the U-boat arm? It doesn't have fun. It does not have fun. Hedgehog, if you have Hedgehog and all those things earlier, that does cause the U-boat. Because the main advantage the U-boats have versus the early convoy battles is that in order for a ship to attack them, they have to lose ASDIC contact with them because they have to run over them with their depth charges. But if you have the Squid, you can stand back and stand off while still maintaining ASDIC contact, and boom, boom, boom. So it's a force multiplier, basically. You have far more capability for individual units to engage submarines. Right. Jeff Beeler, Canada moves her ASW Sea Kings from Bonaventure light carrier to 1 each on 9 frigates and 2 each on the 4 tribals and 2 each on 2 supply ships. So about 21 more than on Bonaventure. Yeah. That is true. That was true when you have enough escorts. But if you only have one carrier, if you have a task force and you have that task force build around that carrier, then you have extra ones build on the carrier, you have a far more advantage than the whole force together. Nighthand production. How much better would Britain be in? Also throw in a few escort carriers in the mix of fun. If you've got escort carriers and you've got throw forward weapons, then the submarines are going to be having not a nice life. That's basically you've got mid-war, almost 2 generations ahead anti-submarine warfare than you had in 1939 by then. That's going to be doing a lot of fun. Not a lot of fun for them to deal with. They'd have to do a lot of work to get up. Jeffrey, how did the HMS Robin experience affect the design of light fleet carriers? They went for stronger catapults and stronger arrestor cables from the get-go. Donna Robertson, is it possible now to have a warship with the extended life cycle of previous types using refits? Pretty much we do, if you think about it. They do have quite long life cycles, but you have to use the refits. Angus, good night. Pleasure. Richard Hughes, Thank you. It's a pleasure. General Freeman Jeff Peters, Dr. Clark. I think in understanding command, control, communication capabilities as a force multiplier. Yeah, they are. Sarah Thompson, Steph Thompson. Last one this afternoon, Dr. Clark. How better off, how long would the RN have had to been able to hold onto the N3s if they had gotten them built? If they gotten them built, then everyone else would have gotten equivalents built, so they'd have held on to them until the end of World War II. Night Heron Productions. Follow on from an old question. Allies keep Norway and thus gain continuous supply to iron ore. How much better would British industry war production be in, and what knock-ons could that bring? You're talking far greater security for the Arctic convoys. You're talking pushing back German ability to get out. Allies could base both sides of the North Sea going backwards and forwards, and that's not good for the Germans. And they could get closer, and you could also potentially be talking about Allied air bases in Norway being used to attack Germany to extend the range of the bomber forces. So, yeah, it's a huge knock-on effect if you have Norway still in the war on the Allied side. John Emmett, ideal medium Cadabar carrier for you, something between American 4-class? HMS Queen Elizabeth. The Queen Elizabeth class Cadabar version is probably what you go for. Night Heron Productions. That's my last one for the night. You get from the good night. Thank you. Carl von Gasper. Also, Hedgehog. Looks like having a bigger kill zone per ton of ammo carried than a ton of conventional depth charges on a wreck. Yeah, it does. Dana Freeman at Dr. Clark and Night Heron Production. Best intervention for anti-submarine warfare in early war would be to... No, Admiral King did okay. He just was making the best decisions for America, not necessarily the best decisions for the whole world. This Francis fault. There are some mariners who consider the deep water evacuation training a waste of time because if anything goes wrong at those depths, you're likely dead. Pretty much. So you might steal German weakness of World War I, Norway critical for Swedish ore. Yeah. Basically, if you have it, you knock out the supplies of Swedish ore and you knock out the supplies of so much. Yeah. Narvik is the critical place to hold. There's a reason there's so many battles take there, because Narvik is the critical port for access to Swedish ore. So that's why Narvik is so important. That's why the British go there, the Germans go there, everyone goes to Narvik because it's so critical for Swedish ore. That's basically where you've got to go. Right. Got a few more minutes for questions, so carry on. I said I'll go at past, and by my reckoning I've got about 8 minutes. And then I will have done 3.5 hours. Which is fun. Steven Solomon, my apologies, meant the G3s. Thank you, though. I believe it would be a similar answer. Yeah, I was guessing you meant the G3s, so, you know, I just went with it. Bound Home, whom would you say is the more innovative in modern naval design moment? I'd say the USN are trying to be, but I think the Western allies are certainly picking it up more. It's one of the few reasons Sweden could stay neutral. Attack and the mines are blown up. Yep. Carl von Gasmer, a big can of worms. How would neutrals react to Norway invaded by Britain? Basically, Britain wouldn't have invaded Norway unless Norway had been invaded by Germany, technically was the theory. The actual plan, as Drac pointed out, was to seize control possibly of the ports. Neutrals could have been interesting over it. It could certainly have pissed off some American feeling, but the British policy would have been we are invading to protect from invasion. And basically, Paul Jones, why only 16 tribals? Because treaty limitations. Literally. Steve Mike, what's your hourly rate? Depends what the job is. Literally, that is the bit. That is the thing. Depends what work I'm working on. Greg Straharsky, thoughts on the RN acquiring multi-hulls in the future? I wouldn't be surprised if they do, but at the moment I don't see them. Stafford Thompson, thank you, appreciate it. It's best to you and your family and Fluffy Research Assistant. 2, our jacks are bugging me, we need to walk them soon. Yeah. I can hear mine making a noise now because he's heard that it's coming to an end. So he's sort of going, yes, next is me, and then you can do your burgers for tea later. I have some burgers to cook for some tea. Don Rossman, any interest in Wargame? Drax used to great effect. I do have some interest in Wargame. I don't do it as much as I used to, but if you have Twitter, The Lawton unit at King's College London have got all sorts of wargaming, as does King's Wargaming from the War Studies Department at King's. And they have all sorts of details about it and how they're doing it, and they've got some big plans for some very big war games to be run next year and these sort of things. Possibly later this year, if they manage to with the coronavirus. To Frankfurt, how much do you think China could expand in the next 30 years? Both as natural expansion or if it tried hard? Navy-wise. If it tried hard, it could expand really, really hard. But the thing is, I think they've got a lot of issues internally to deal with at the moment, and I think that's going to cause them the problem. I think it's the internal issues which are going to cause the problem. Bandhome, what was the reason that Greenland was mostly ignored during the war? Iceland was invaded by the UK, same with the Faroe Islands, but Greenland was mostly left alone, it seems. It was just, felt to be just that much further away, and in the nicest way, the Canadians were quite close by. If the Germans had tried to get to Greenland, the Canadians could have been remobilized, and no one wants to fight the Canadians in snow. Daniel Freeman, rewar gaming, rerun the sea line scenario in multiple options with computer aid. I have done that. I was involved in that, and that was a lot of fun. But none of them worked well because there is a major strike force pretty much the Royal Navy keeps in readiness up in, well, theoretically up in Scapa Flow, but often coming south to the further forth. And when I say major strike force, I'm talking 2 flotillas of Tribal class destroyers, a squadron of Town class cruisers, some battleships, battle cruisers, aircraft carriers, 3 or 4 flotillas of other destroyers. We're talking something which is going to be a massive force that would have come down the North Sea and into the Channel like avenging Armageddon and gone, are you really going to get in our way now? Stafford Thompson, we're friendly until you say war. That's what the British and the British, the Australians and the Canadians are all like. They're friendly until you say it's wartime. Then they can start getting very inventive. Bitgeron, there was action in Greenland, fights over weather stations. US icebreakers were used and dog sleds. Yeah, but weather stations is a bit short of invasion, let's be honest. We will try it with weather stations. And weather stations, one of the interesting things is Germans had a weather station right next to one of the convoy routes that the British knew about for the entire of pretty much World War II, but they didn't really see it as a problem because they used its signals to work out the German codes. Night Heron Production. One very last question. I like to keep Northern Norway. Does Barbarossa still happen? Would just seem like suicide at that point, more than it already was. Probably. The Germans weren't really the most logical when it came to war. Kingsrook, I wonder what the status of our stealth snowmobile program is. Oh. In terms of the Canadian, that's just your Olympic team, isn't it? In terms of Canada. It's Francis' fault. Thanks for the talk. I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening. I need to get to the shops before they close. Yes, well, this is just about to end. I think it's about 1 minute. So, the last minute, anyone? Thank you very much to everyone. And thank you to everyone who's a subscriber. Thank you to all who's a patron. Thank you very much to everyone who's helping out, liking the stuff and sharing it. It's really, really kind of you. So, thank you, everyone. Right. Let's see. Is the USA still a reliable ally with Mr. Trump at the helm? We hope so. I think so. I think actually they are. I think it's more reliable than people like to joke about. But I think it is reliable. All right. Would the German Navy have been more useful in terms of capital ships in the Baltic? Banner. No. Grasowski, thank you, Alex. Good night. Night Kingsrook, night Greg, night Carl, night Paul. Thank you for watching. Night Stafford. Night Bijron, night Stephen, night Jeff, night Samuel, night Daniel, night Tattoo, night everyone. Right, I better go walk the fluffy researchers and take care.